Chapter 2264. If Ling Han really only had the cultivation level of 11th secret, he would definitely be in a hurry to break out. Wasting even a minute and a second could cause him to be consigned to eternal damnation. However, he was the master of this heaven and earth, and all the celestial kings here added together could not possibly be his match. So he took his time, smiled, and asked, "Oh, why?" "Because you deserve to die." Xin Chao moved. He could not waste time. The celestial kings of the two realms were restraining each other, giving him a chance to move, but there was definitely not much time. He dared not allow Ling Han to continue growing. It was actually 11th secret, and if he took another step forward from 11th secret, Ling Han would be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with him, or even crush him. This was something he could not tolerate. And why did he have the confidence to move? Ling Han had just erupted into a great battle, burning his ancestral blood, or using some kind of secret technique. Now his battle prowess must have dropped drastically, and it was a good chance to make a move. Afterwards, he could just make the foreign realm cultivators take the blame. In this heaven and earth, even the divine intent of a celestial king could not spread very far. So he did not have to worry about exposing himself. He drew out his weapon. Now was not a spar, but a killing match, so there was no need to abide by any rules. A treasured tower hung above his head. It had a total of 7 levels, and was completely snow white. Light descended from it. Those were rays of earthy yellow light, and each ray was astonishingly heavy, capable of killing an ascending origin tier cultivator. Annoying thing, destroy this imposter. Small Tower's voice immediately sounded. Right, here it comes again. Ling Han shook his head. Small Tower hated all other pagoda-shaped treasured tools, and it was definitely not just empty words. Die. Xin Chao pounced over. The chi of the treasure tower surged out, and the light of the Tao pressed down on Ling Han. He had not even neared Ling Han when a frightening pressure assaulted him, causing even ascending origin tiers to tremble in fear. Ling Han retreated, and did not take the attack head-on. Xin Chao laughed loudly. This was the only time in his battle with Ling Han that he had gained the upper hand, causing all the pores on his body to open up. He quickly chased and shot out a punch, driving the regulations in the treasured tower, turning it into an earth dragon. Xin Chao, you're abusing your position to take revenge. You've got guts, Ling Han said indifferently. Xin Chao sneered. My ancestor is a 7th firmament immortal king, and I'm an emperor. I'm the most beloved descendant of my ancestor. No matter what trouble I cause, my ancestor will resolve it for me. Ling Han shook his head. This was truly a spoiled brat. If he really was one of the 11 secret emperor stars, and had died at Xin Chao's hands, it was likely that every 9th heaven celestial king would go mad, and tear Xin Chao to shreds. Such a person deserved to die. Han Lin, after killing you, I'll go find your women. Guess what I'll do to them, said Xin Chao sinisterly. Ling Han's eyes couldn't help but turn cold. He was originally quite patient, but now he couldn't bear it anymore. However, the number of foreign immortal kings who entered also reached 137. It was about enough. Ling Han made a move, grabbing at Xin Chao. Seeking your own death. Xin Chao smirked coldly. The treasured tower above his head was personally forged by the ancestor of the Xin clan. Though it wasn't a celestial tool, it was imbued with a sliver of celestial king power. He couldn't actively activate it, but the treasured tower automatically emitted light. If touched, all ascending origin tiers would be mercilessly suppressed. Ling Han actually made a move to attack. Wasn't he seeking death? Have a taste of pain. Xin Chao revealed a mocking smile because Ling Han's hand had already touched the light of light. Pung! A crisp sound rang out, and light flashed wildly. Ling Han's hand reached straight in, and grabbed hold of the treasured pagoda. Then, with a forceful twist, this pseudo-divine metal of unknown stars instantly turned into innumerable fragments. Ling Han's hand descended again, and was already gripping Xin Chao's neck. This change was too sudden and too fast, and Xin Chao couldn't react at all. He stared blankly at Ling Han, his expression filled with confusion. How could this be? That was a treasured tool personally forged by the ancestor. It was 8-star, and even ascending origin tier elites couldn't possibly break it. But Ling Han only squeezed lightly, and the treasured tower shattered. It was completely unreasonable. Impossible, impossible, impossible. Xin Chao only knew how to mumble these 3 words over and over again. All right, I'll let you experience something even more impossible. Ling Han smiled and his figure moved. Finally, it was time for him to begin his harvest. Puny human, offer your life. After discovering Ling Han's whereabouts, a king of the celestial realm immediately charged over. There were no celestial kings near Ling Han now, so it was the best time to make a move. No! The kings of the celestial realm all roared. No matter how talented Ling Han was, the difference in cultivation level was so great that a casual strike from a celestial king could turn Ling Han into ashes. No! Xin Chao also shouted, because he was being held by Ling Han. Under the attack of a celestial king, he would definitely die. Wasn't this a huge loss? What did it have to do with him? Why did they have to drag him down with them? Ling Han broke into a smile and said, It's fine, it's fine. He stretched out a hand and pressed forward lightly. Wang, the attack that the celestial king had shot out suddenly stopped, and then collapsed with a boom. All of a sudden, the whole place fell deathly silent. That was a celestial king's attack, and it was actually easily dispersed by Ling Han. Was this possible? Was this a dream? But after a moment of daze, all the celestial kings began to search for who had acted on behalf of Ling Han. If they were to believe that a mere immortal palace tier cultivator, even if he had formed 11 mystery realms, and was comparable to an ascending origin tier, could match a celestial king, it was impossible no matter what. Humph! The king of foreign lands that had acted previously sneered and attacked again. Boom! He shot out a black light, which shot like a sharp arrow at Ling Han. Hurry up and release me! Xin Chao shouted. If you want to die, then die alone. Why drag me down with you? There were celestial kings that could disperse 1 or 2 attacks for Ling Han, but 10 attacks, 100 attacks, there would always be a gap. And as long as there was a single mistake, he and Ling Han would be dead for sure. He no longer cared whether Ling Han died or not. What was important was that he didn't want to die. Ling Han shook his head slightly. I already said it's fine, why don't you believe me? He stretched out his hand again, and the black light immediately stopped. In fact, it even turned around and attacked that king of foreign lands. This time, all the celestial kings paled in shock. Dispersing the attack of a celestial king was nothing surprising. There were many 5th heaven celestial kings here. But to reverse the attack of an 11 Lotus celestial king was something that not even a 5th heaven celestial king could do. Just what in the world was going on? I don't believe it. The king of foreign lands roared. He began to store up power for a powerful attack, deeply convinced that there was a powerful celestial king behind Ling Han. He was an 11 Lotus celestial king, so he definitely wouldn't be a match for a 5th heaven celestial king. However, if he wanted to kill a puny immortal palace tier cultivator, there was definitely a chance, a possibility. Even a celestial king was no exception. This was especially true when using a powerful attack. As long as a single shockwave swept past Ling Han, the problem would be solved. You're crazy. Dodge, dodge. Xin Chao shouted. He really didn't want to die. At this time, he would even call Ling Han ancestor. Little ancestor, I beg of you, please hide. That's an immortal king level big shot. Ling Han smiled, raised his right foot, and stomped down on the king of foreign lands. Reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 2265. A Beautiful Romance. Ling Han's foot transformed into a massive black foot that stomped down on the king of foreign lands like a mountain. Seeing this scene, everyone shook their heads. This was truly an ant challenging a lion. Not to mention transforming one's foot into a tall mountain, even if one's foot transformed into the size of a star. So what? Before the might of an immortal king, this was simply as easy as blowing off dust. And it was utterly insignificant. Moreover, he dared to challenge an immortal king expert, and even use his foot. Just what sort of contempt was this? The king of foreign lands was driven mad with rage. Just because you have the protection of an immortal king, you dare to treat me with such contempt? Seeking death. He was in the middle of storing up a powerful attack, so he completely disdained Ling Han's attack. This was just some trash of the 11th secret. So what if he let him strike once? Once he unleashed this attack, he would obliterate the greatest threat to the foreign lands. Don't. Xin Chao's face turned green in fright. If this foot landed, the king of foreign lands would definitely be completely fine. But the backlash of the power of a celestial king was something that neither he nor Ling Han could contend against. They would only be blown to dust. He didn't want to die. Boom. The foot stomped down, and the king of foreign lands vanished. Only that massive foot remained, seeming to take physical form. Hiss. Ah. Eh. The crowd instantly fell deathly still, as if Ling Han had been able to neutralize the king of foreign lands' attack. This was a result that no one could believe. A puny immortal palace tier cultivator was nothing more than an ant in front of an immortal king. But with a single stomp, an immortal king expert had vanished without a trace. No, not even his aura. It was like his body and soul had been extinguished. Who could accept this, and who could believe it? Do you believe me now? Ling Han smiled at Xin Chao. Xin Chao's mouth was wide open like an idiot, his mind completely blank. Ling Han raised his leg. Boom. That mountainous foot also rose up. And as the dust settled, the king of foreign lands was reduced to a bloody pulp. Interestingly, this king of foreign lands was in the form of a cockroach, like a bug that had been stepped on. A mighty 12 Lotus expert had actually died in such an insignificant manner. It was so vexing that it was unacceptable. The whole audience was in an uproar. Everyone had recovered from the shock, and what was left was intense doubt and confusion. Was this really a powerhouse who was acting on behalf of Ling Han? A fifth heaven celestial king could indeed crush a third heaven celestial king. But which celestial king wasn't a genius? Even if there was a difference of two small realms, it shouldn't be so one-sided, right? But this place restricted one's cultivation level. Celestial kings of the fifth heaven could not enter at all. How could this be explained? Could it be that immortal domains people have grasped a special method that allows immortal kings above the fifth layer of the heavens to enter? The foreign realms king thought. Could it be that we've grasped a special method that allows immortal kings above the fifth layer to enter? The immortal regions king wondered. I don't believe it. A king of foreign lands stepped forward and pressed a hand down on Ling Han. Boom. Runes began to glow, and a supreme energy began to circulate. This was an expert with 14 lotuses. A fifth heaven celestial king was the strongest power here. At this moment, the immortal region's king had forgotten to save Ling Han. Perhaps it was more accurate to say that they were already numb from the shock of the power behind Ling Han, and they wanted to know how this power could be neutralized. Xin Chao was given quite a fright. He simply couldn't believe that Ling Han really had the ability to resist an immortal king, and his face turned green with fright. He had never been so timid, but after being repeatedly attacked by an immortal king, no matter how strong his heart was, he couldn't bear it. Boom! The giant hand reached out, causing the heavens to tremble. This was a power at the peak of the realm. Ling Han smiled and clenched his fist. Boom! Bang! The immortal king's hand immediately shattered. The king of foreign lands grunted, and a trickle of blood seeped out of his right hand. This was the backlash of the laws, and he had been slightly injured. At this sight, all the immortal kings were certain that there was no immortal king behind Ling Han. Rather, he really did have the strength to resist an immortal king. How could this be? It was just a trifling 11th secret. Xin Chao also numbly stared at Ling Han. He felt like this fellow was a devil, and he was so scared that he wanted to die, his bile rising up in his throat. Ling Han chuckled and said, "You dare to make a move against me? You're quite bold, aren't you?" Suddenly, he revealed endless killing intent. His figure flashed, and he had already appeared in front of the 14 Lotus Kings of the foreign realm. Then he delivered a punch. Celestial King tears were naturally powerful, and their divine sense was incredibly sharp. In practically the instant that Ling Han appeared, the 14 Lotus Kings had already made their move, blasting a strike at Ling Han's face. Xin Chao's performance this time was quite good. He didn't scream, but upon closer inspection, his eyes had rolled back into his head, and he had fainted. Ling Han's strength had paralyzed him with fear. Bang! Ling Han's fist came even faster, and landed on the head of that 14th Lotus King. That elite's head was like a watermelon. immediately exploding into pieces. The headless body swayed a few times, and then with a bang, it crashed to the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. Without the grief of the heavens and earth, it was like an insignificant person had died. Ling Han skillfully searched the expert's spatial divine artifact and stuffed it into his pocket. He truly had done this sort of thing many times. Gulp. There was the sound of saliva being swallowed. These were the 14 Lotus Kings, equivalent to 5th Heaven Immortal Kings. If there were no accidents, monarch tiers would only be at this level. But in front of Ling Han, this kind of elite could be killed just like that. They were as insignificant as ants. Just now, who said that Ling Han was an ant? Hurry up and step forward. I promise not to kill you. You obtained the magic cube of origin. A king of foreign lands finally reacted, pointing at Ling Han, his voice trembling. Not good. Ling Han smiled and said, there's finally someone smart, but it's too late. The kings of foreign lands paled. They weren't afraid that Ling Han had obtained the magic cube of origin, but that this world was too small. Even if Ling Han had obtained the magic cube of origin, his strongest fighting power would only be at 8th or 9th Heaven Immortal King, far from being a match for an Empyrean. But once this world was destroyed, it would create a terrifying storm of energy that would even affect the stability of the connection point between the two worlds. Not even an Empyrean would be able to cross. This was what they were frowning about. There's no need for you to think so far ahead, because I'll blow all of you up one by one, Ling Han coldly said. In a war between two worlds, there was no sympathy or mercy, only slaughter. Only when one side fell could the conflict be forever resolved. Let's go, a king of foreign lands roared. Although this kid was far from reaching the Immortal King realm, he had obtained the magic cube of origin and was the master of this world. The fact that they had been able to enter this world meant that they were not as majestic as this world, so they were definitely no match for Ling Han. Thus, there was no future in trying to force their way out. They would only be throwing their lives away. They had more than 130 Immortal Kings. If they attacked together, would not even one of them be able to escape? Boom! The kings of foreign lands turned and fled. It seemed like they could only ask the Empyrean to destroy this world, even if it would delay the invasion by 10 billion years, perhaps even an epoch. Did I say you could leave? Ling Han coldly said. He was about to show his might. Reading on the phone. Chapter 2266. A Beautiful Romance. When Ling Han attacked, he was like a tiger charging into a flock of sheep. With each punch, a king of foreign lands would be killed. Simple and crude. Immortal kings were like little lambs, powerless to resist. This made one's scalp go numb. It was as if Ling Han had transformed into a great demon on the level of 9th heaven. His life and death were in his hands, and everything was under his control. The kings of the immortal region sighed. At this time, anyone could guess that Ling Han was intentionally waiting for enough kings of foreign lands to arrive before revealing his butcher's knife. Therefore, this was like closing the door to beat the dog, a massacre. No one could stop Ling Han. He was the master of this world, and unless an Empyrean or a quasi-Empyrean came, no one could be his match. Kill. 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 Ling Han was like a demon from the underworld, and there was no pity in his eyes. The two worlds were enemies, and he was killing the foreign martial artists to save his home, so he naturally could not show any mercy. It was not just the foreign kings. Centipede Heart, Forest Fall, and the other Emperor Stars were also on Ling Han's kill list. If these Emperor Stars were allowed to mature, each one of them could become a 9th Heaven Immortal King, or even an Empyrean. No! Bang! Forest Fall had barely managed to spit out a single word when Ling Han mercilessly blew up his head. So what if it was an Emperor Star? In front of the power of a quasi-Empyrean, it was nothing more than dregs. Ling Han expressionlessly transformed into thousands of clones, simultaneously pursuing all the foreign martial artists. The Naira aura shrieked, and all three of its horns glowed with light. The dazzling symbols around it transformed into something like an ocean. However, it was completely useless. Ling Han pointed a finger and paw. She was reduced to dust. Centipede Heart madly fled, but a sword light slashed down, instantly cutting him into countless pieces. He couldn't be more dead. Don't even think about killing me, Scarlet Blood roared. He finally understood why there was such a large gap between him and Ling Han. Ling Han had the magic cube of origin, and could even kill an immortal king with a single punch, much less an 8 Lotus 11th layer cultivator like him. He was unwilling. He was Empyrean Scarlet Flame's descendant, an indescribably noble existence. How could he die here? He mumbled. A strange power surged around him as he chanted Empyrean Scarlet Flame's true name. Very few people knew the true name of an Empyrean, because just thinking about it would bring about great karma and great relationships. However, Qi Shui was a descendant of the Scarlet Flame Empyrean, so his bloodline was engraved with the true name of the Empyrean. Qi Shui activated his bloodline and manifested the Scarlet Flame, Heavenly Venerable's true name, turning it into a brilliant light that illuminated the world. Chanting the name of the Empyrean was a type of great karma. This was because the Empyrean was not tolerated by the world, and if a wisp of his will was summoned over, it would naturally be targeted by the world. Ling Han immediately sensed something. An inexplicable power that made his heart palpitate was growing stronger. One had to know that he was now a quasi-Empyrean, so how strong was the power that made his heart palpitate? Celestial Master Scarlet Blaze is about to appear. Ling Han coldly snorted. With a single thought, "Pa!" the scarlet blood was reduced to a bloody pulp, and the process of summoning the Empyrean was immediately interrupted. No! The King of Foreign Lands roared. Qi Shui was far too important. Not only was he the invincible Emperor Star, but he was also the descendant of an Empyrean. What are you screaming for? Ling Han coldly said. His clones began to move, blowing apart one King of Foreign Lands after another. However, a hole was forcibly torn open in the sky, and a figure emerged. He was so faint that he was almost transparent, but even so, he still emitted an extremely powerful aura, as if he could shatter the heavens and earth with a single thought. Lord Scarlet Flame. The surviving foreigners all kneeled, their faces brimming with pious expressions. This was the foreign Empyrean Scarlet Flame. The foreigners were overjoyed. In their view, as long as an Empyrean appeared, there was nothing that could not be resolved. Open the seal and release him, Empyrean Scarlet Flame said, and a dreadful energy surged out like a tsunami. Ling Han couldn't help but smile. Even if a wisp of your divine sense descended, it's hard to say whether you would be a match for me. Moreover, it's only a blur right now, old man. Go somewhere cool. I'll sooner or later chop off your dog head. Audacious. Impudent. The foreigners all angrily rebuked. To dare to speak to a supreme Empyrean like this infuriated them. In the hearts of the foreigners, Empyreans were indestructible gods. This is my world. Scram for me. Ling Han punched. Boom. Empyrean Scarlet Flame's blur was immediately extinguished. The foreigners had their mouths wide open, completely speechless. Although that was only an Empyrean's blur, not even a wisp of his divine sense, to see it explode with a single punch from Ling Han was still a powerful blow to them. This was defying the heavens. Ling Han snorted, his eyes seething with killing intent. An Empyrean had already been alarmed, so he had to act quickly, or else this Empyrean would quickly arrive. This new world could not stop an Empyrean, and this was not the only foreign Empyrean. Pung pung pung. Streaks of blood flew into the air. No one was a match for Ling Han. In just a few breaths of time, Ling Han had slaughtered all of the foreign creatures. He bathed in the blood of his enemies, standing proudly in the sky. Even though it was just this lonely figure, it still gave others the feeling, as if even if the other side sent a magnificent army, they still wouldn't be able to make him take a single step back. Shen Chao slowly woke up. Both his legs were trembling as he said, I give up, I give up, I give up. Over and over again, he kept repeating the same words. Ling Han snorted and said, You are abusing your position to avenge a private grudge. If not for the fact that my strength is far above yours, I would have long become a lonely soul. Are you trying to deceive a ghost? A lowly person like you is a waste of resources, even if you live. His killing intent blazed, carrying with it the aura of annihilating the foreign kings. It was incomparably terrifying. Shen Chao was actually scared to the point of pissing himself. There was nothing he could do. He was equivalent to facing a quasi-emperor, and he had been scared so many times before that his courage had long disappeared. He did not have a trace of the demeanor of an emperor. "Please be lenient," an immortal king hurriedly said. "This is a person of my immortal domain. Do not abuse your power." No matter how many people he killed, he was still making a contribution to the immortal domain. But slaughtering fellow citizens of the immortal domain was a great crime. Moreover, Shen Chao was an emperor. In the future, he would at least become a fifth heaven immortal king. He was a force that could not be ignored. Ling Han attacked, and Shen Chao's head was immediately blasted apart. His body and soul were both destroyed. He had already spared Shen Chao several times. But not only did the other party not restrain himself, he even wanted to kill him. Did he think that he was made of clay and had no temper? The immortal king who spoke couldn't help but grimace. He had some relationship with the immortal king of the Shen clan, which was why he had taken the initiative to speak. He hadn't expected that Ling Han would not give him any face at all. He had just gotten lucky and obtained the magic cube of origin. As long as he left this place, he could crush this bug with a single finger. However, he was the only one who was dissatisfied. The others, including the immortal kings, were all indescribably happy. This was because they had killed more than 130 kings of foreign lands in this battle, as well as many outstanding figures of the younger generation. This was definitely a heavy blow to the foreign lands. If it were the immortal domain, it would probably take 2 or 3 epochs to recover. Long live, everyone cheered. Bang! But at this moment, the world trembled as if it was about to collapse. Today was 6 p.m. Chapter 2268. This palace hall was too grand, and there was light swirling around it, exuding a supreme aura. Ling Han could be sure that this palace hall was a precious treasure. He used the heaven-deceiving technique, concealing his own aura, and more importantly, concealing the existence of the Black Tower. There were many ninth heaven celestial kings here. He channeled the heaven-deceiving technique to conceal his own aura. More importantly, he concealed the existence of the Black Tower. After all, there were numerous celestial kings in the ninth heaven. Here, that ascending origin tier elite's back involuntarily bent, revealing a cautious expression, as if he didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. This was natural. Multiple celestial kings sat in the palace hall, and several ninth heaven emperors sat high up on the other side of the palace hall, as if they were immortal gods. Arriving here, that ascending origin tier elite's back involuntarily bent, revealing a cautious expression, as if he didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. This was natural. Multiple celestial kings sat in the palace hall, and several ninth heaven emperors sat high up on the other side of the palace hall, as if they were immortal gods. This was his true body. What appeared in the Saint Source Academy was only a wisp of his thought, a manifestation, and couldn't be compared to his true body at all. Ling Han appeared very humble, bowing slightly to the celestial king Myriad Ancient. "Thank you for your praise, Lord Myriad Ancient. It is indeed an everlasting merit," another celestial king said. Those who could speak at this time were all ninth heaven beings. Her title was Qianyu, and she was a relatively rare female celestial king. Since ancient times heroes come from the young. A celestial king dressed in a Taoist robe stroked his beard with a smile. His title was Cloud Void, and he was naturally also a ninth heaven celestial king. The celestial kings were not stingy with their praise. Aside from Ling Han killing a large number of foreign elites, his own talent in martial art also made the celestial kings feel very good. "I suggest that we do everything possible to nurture this child," the celestial king said. He was very fond of Ling Han. With this child's talent, and with the magic cube of origin, it's possible that he can surpass the limits of the regulations and become a celestial venerable. Celestial venerable. The celestial king's expression stiffened. This was an existence that stood above the regulations, and there were only 3 such overlords in the entire celestial realm. "This seat agrees." The evergreen immortal king immediately spoke. He was a close friend of the Myriad Ancient immortal king. "This seat agrees as well." The cloud-stepping immortal king agreed. "This seat doesn't agree." At this moment, a silhouette appeared at the entrance of the great hall. casting a long shadow that gave the immortal king's boundless pressure. Imperial Void. The primordial immortal king's eyes narrowed as he spat out 2 words. Ling Han's heart skipped a beat as he walked towards this person. It was a youth that looked to be no more than 16 or 17 years old. However, his sideburns were snow white, and he revealed a wisp of age. He was clearly just one person, but standing there, he was like an immovable divine mountain that no one could cross. Incomparably powerful, Ling Han had a feeling that it wouldn't be easy to kill this person, even if he was still in the neutral zone. This was an indescribable intuition, but Ling Han was very sure of it. Imperial Void Immortal King was an overlord among 9th Firmament Immortal Kings. He could definitely be ranked in the top 10, or even the top 3. Small Tower had once said that when the Imperial Void had been in the Severing Mundane tier, he had once destroyed his cultivation level, and started over a few times. He had severed until there was nothing left to sever, and only then had he advanced into the Dividing Soul tier. This kind of existence was probably already infinitely close to the Heavenly Venerable tier. No, he was still very far away from the Heavenly Venerable tier. Ling Han immediately corrected himself in his mind. However, the other party was really only a step away from becoming a pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier. It was likely that the Primordial Immortal King wouldn't be able to withstand 100 moves from him. This was the direct disciple of a Heavenly Venerable tier, and he was extraordinarily powerful. What do you mean? The Evergreen Immortal King asked. The Imperial Void Immortal King strode in, a terrifying aura sweeping over. The Celestial Kings in the main hall were all intimidated by him, and there was actually silence. He calmly said, "I think that this brat should hand over the magic cube of origin." When these words were spoken, the Celestial Kings were instantly in an uproar. Ling Han could be said to have made a great contribution to the Celestial Realm, but the first words of the Imperial Void Immortal King were to strip Ling Han of his most powerful treasure. Wasn't this disappointing? If that was the case, who would still work for the Celestial Realm? The Imperial Void Immortal King continued, "I have already touched the boundary of the Heavenly Venerable tier. If I have the magic cube of origin, I am confident that I can break through to the Heavenly Venerable tier within 100 million years." He paused, and then continued, "If I become a Heavenly Venerable tier, I will definitely be able to fend off the enemies outside the borders, and ensure that the Celestial Realm remains immortal for billions of eras. Say, do you guys think that I have a bit of selfishness in my actions?" Ling Han was speechless. The Imperial Void Immortal King clearly wanted to take the magic cube of origin for himself, yet he could say it in such a dignified manner, as if he was even doing it for the greater good. This had definitely surpassed the realm of shamelessness. The Celestial Kings exchanged looks, appearing very hesitant. The Imperial Void Immortal King had been an absolute prodigy when he was young, and he had led an era. Just by saying that his Severing Mundane tier cultivation had reached the point where there was nothing left to sever, one could see just how freakish he was. And when he advanced into the 9th Heaven Celestial King tier, he also became a top-tier elite. At most, there were only 10 people that could stand shoulder to shoulder with him, and he could even rank in the top 3. His strength was truly unprecedented. If one were to say who was most qualified to become the next Heavenly Venerable in this world, then the Imperial Void Immortal King would definitely be one of them. To be honest, after the Imperial Void Immortal King obtained the magic cube of origin, what were the chances of him becoming a Heavenly Venerable? It was probably very high. This kind of existence was really only a hair's breadth away from becoming a Heavenly Venerable, and the magic cube of origin was the stepping stone to open this final hurdle. The usefulness of a Heavenly Venerable was far, far too great. The reason why it was so difficult to defend the Heavens Pass was because there was no Heavenly Venerable standing guard. Otherwise, there would be an endless supply of regulations that could operate, and even if there was only one Heavenly Venerable on the Celestial Realm's side, it could be used as 3, 5, or even 10. If the Imperial Void becomes a Heavenly Venerable, everyone thought, he would only need 100 million years, and the situation of the Celestial Realm would be who knew how many times better. With this thought, a considerable number of celestial kings were tempted. To them, the importance of coming to the celestial realm naturally far surpassed the benefits of one or two people. Immortal King Imperial Void looked at Ling Han and said, "Young man, hand over the magic cube of origin, and I won't treat you unfairly. I'll take you as my disciple, and in the future, it's not like you won't have the chance to touch the boundary of an heavenly venerable." Ling Han sneered. He had been suppressing a bellyful of anger in his heart for a long time, and now it finally erupted. He said, "May I ask Lord Imperial Void, where is your master?" Immortal King Imperial Void's master was naturally Empyrean Skyseal. The meaning behind Ling Han's words was clear. It wasn't as if the celestial realm didn't have an Empyrean, and his master was one. But what had he done for the celestial realm? So what if he became an Empyrean? Would you really do anything for the celestial realm? If an Empyrean didn't have a great resolve, how could he block at least 10 Empyreans from the other side? Empyrean Skyseal was like a turtle hiding in its shell. How could Ling Han believe that Immortal King Imperial Void was an exception? Yes, Ling Han was filled with confidence in himself. He firmly believed that even if he didn't obtain the magic cube of origin, he could still become an Empyrean. It was just that the process would be more tortuous and troublesome, so he was willing to let go of the magic cube of origin. The problem was that there was absolutely no way he would give it to Immortal King Imperial Void. Immortal King Imperial Void didn't get angry, but instead laughed. "Young man, your courage is truly great. However, no one has ever been able to refuse the things that I want." He directly reached out, grabbing at Ling Han. Chapter 2269. The Imperial Void Immortal King made his move. The 10,000 Ancient Immortal King snorted and said, "Imperial Void, you've gone too far." He also acted, helping Ling Han dissipate this attack. Boom! The entire Great Hall trembled as a terrifying tempest of energy gushed forth. Pung pung pung. All the Immortal Kings below the 8th heavenly layer were flung through the air. A 9th level Immortal King was just too strong. Imperial Void and Wangu were the cream of the crop. Just a single attack from them was already so powerful. Only Ling Han was still at his original spot, because the attacks that were aimed at him were all blocked by the 10,000 Ancient Immortal King. "Wangu, you dare to obstruct me?" The Imperial Void Immortal King coldly spoke, his expression cold. Right and wrong had long since ceased to exist in his mind. Everything he did was for the sake of pursuing the peak of martial art. Now there was an opportunity in front of him. Regardless of whether someone offered it to him, or if he snatched it, he had to get it. The myriad Ancient Immortal King also had a look of anger on his face. This young man has done a great deed for the immortal realms. As a senior, you actually want to deprive him of his treasures? Don't you feel ashamed? Shameful. The Imperial Void Immortal King laughed uproariously. Before the survival of the immortal realms, you are telling me that it's shameful? Hehe, since the ancient times cultivators should sever their emotions and karma. Your obsession is too heavy. No wonder your combat prowess has stagnated. The 10,000 Ancient Immortal King laughed coldly. Imperial Void, do you dare to swear a Tao oath that after you become a heavenly venerable, you are willing to fight for the immortal realm until the last drop of blood? The smile on the Imperial Void Immortal King's face instantly vanished. To experts like them, a Tao oath was actually a form of interrogation of their own hearts. Once they made a Tao oath but didn't abide by it, then they would definitely encounter a great misfortune when they charged into a higher cultivation realm. This was a backlash from the heart, more dangerous than anything else. Originally, 9th Firmament Immortal Monarchs could no longer advance further, so there was naturally no need to be afraid of Tao oaths. However, Imperial Void wanted to become a heavenly lord again. That was completely different. Speechless, right? The Primordial Immortal King sneered. Although this brat is audacious, he's right. What has your bloodline done for the immortal region? Many immortal kings nodded in agreement. Originally, if there were 3 heavenly venerables as commanders, the pressure on the heavens pass would be countless times smaller. The Imperial Void Immortal King frowned. He naturally did not care what these immortal kings were thinking, but he wanted the things on Ling Han. If he angered these immortal kings, it would be impossible for him to get what he wanted. After all, There were indeed a few immortal kings here, who could stand on equal footing with him. 2 or 3 of them would be able to stop him. He suppressed his killing intent and said, "Empyreans transcend the rules and are not tolerated by the heavens and earth. Every time they make a move, they have to take the great risk of being cut down by the heavens and earth. Thus, unless it is absolutely necessary, how could Empyreans make a move?" These words obtained the approval of many immortal kings. What the Imperial Void Immortal King said was right. Although heavenly venerables were above the laws, they were also not tolerated by the heavens and earth. Sophistry. The primeval Immortal King sneered. "Imperial Void, your words can only deceive immortal kings who have just broken through. 8 epochs ago, the connection point between the 2 realms was already incomparably stable. Even Empyreans from the other realms could enter." Did any Empyreans act at that time? There was, but there was only one heavenly venerable fate born. He fought a bloody battle against 11 Empyreans from the other realms, and at the final juncture, he even merged with the Tao and rammed into the connection point between the 2 realms, causing it to collapse. Only then did the immortal realm have 8 epochs worth of time to recuperate. When these words were spoken, new immortal kings, and even great figures who had only become immortal kings in the last 5 or 6 epochs were all shocked. This was a piece of history that had been destroyed. Who would have thought that 8 epochs ago, the immortal realm had already almost been conquered? Only then did Ling Han come to a sudden realization. This was how the original heavenly venerable Fateborn died. He fought against 11 people alone. No matter how strong the heavenly venerable Fateborn was, there was no way he could match them. Which one of those who could become Empyreans wasn't a supreme powerhouse? It was hard to say who would win even if they fought one-on-one, let alone such a great disparity. Thus, in the end, the heavenly venerable Fateborn could only merge with the Tao and crash into the connection point between the 2 realms, causing it to collapse and become unstable once more. This was to win a chance for the immortal realm to be reborn after the great calamity. But back then, it was already so dangerous, yet not a single one of the 3 great Empyreans took action. This was simply a betrayal of the immortal realm. No, the little pagoda was extremely fearful of Empyrean Fateborn and the other 2. Presumably, the 2 sides were even enemies, so these 3 were even more despicable. Could it be that they were going to drag him down at the crucial moment? Ling Han really couldn't think of a reason why Empyrean Fateborn and the other 2 would do this. But reality was reality. The Imperial Void Immortal King's expression was already as gloomy as water. He stared at the primordial Immortal King and said coldly, "The secrets of the past, my master and the other 2 great figures have already issued a decree, forever sealing this world. You actually still dare to speak of it, truly disgraceful and heinous." Ha 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 ha. The primordial Immortal King laughed loudly. "Didn't you say that Empyreans are not tolerated by the world? Could it be that there are still Empyreans who would come to kill me over this small matter? Then I want to ask, is that trivial matter of the past more important? Or is it more important to resist the foreign realm?" These words really hit the nail on the head. The killing intent of the Imperial Void Immortal King seethed, turning corporeal as it revolved around him. "Primordial Immortal, I initially thought that you were an intelligent person since you were able to live for so long. But now, it seems like you are just lucky. If the immortal realms perish, everyone will be finished. I truly don't understand what your faction and the other 2 factions are thinking, sitting on the edge of the precipice." The primordial Immortal King sighed, feeling an indescribable grief and indignation. If the 3 Empyreans were willing to join forces and fight, the situation would definitely be different. Short-sighted people naturally wouldn't understand. Imperial Void calmly spoke. He stretched his hand and pointed at Ling Han. "Hand over this child, and turn around to leave. If not, this seat will start a massacre today. This seat doesn't believe it." The evergreen Immortal King stepped out, standing shoulder to shoulder with the primordial Immortal King. He was also infuriated. This seat doesn't believe it either. Another Immortal King stood out. This was the 1,000 Words Immortal King. This seat as well. This was the Cloud Void Immortal King. There were as many as 7 Ninth Heavens Immortal Kings, standing on the same side as the primordial Immortal King, facing the Imperial Void Immortal King. "Are all of you tired of living?" The Imperial Void Immortal King coldly spoke. Among these 8 Immortal Kings, only the Primordial Immortal King and the Evergreen Immortal King were worthy of his attention. Although the others were also at the 9th heavens, the difference in combat strength between them was too great. He had no fear at all. Even the Sealed Heart faction cannot cover the sky with a single hand. The Primordial Immortal King roared. "This seat will protect this brat. In that case, all of you can go to hell." The Imperial Void Immortal King stretched out his hand as countless palms appeared in the Great Hall, blasting towards the 8 Immortal Kings. The Primordial Immortal King roared. A beam of immortal light shot out from his body, transforming into an incomparably dazzling sword chi. The other Immortal Kings also acted, attacking the Imperial Void Immortal King. The battle between the 9 Immortal Kings soon left the Great Hall and soared into the air, clashing intensely against each other. The Imperial Void Immortal King was truly powerful. He wasn't at a disadvantage even when fighting 1 against 8. The reason why he could be ranked as the strongest Immortal King was definitely not because of his relationship with Heavenly Paragon Sealed Heart. "Han Lin!" A loud roar rang out, only to see Chaos Desolate walking over, staring at Ling Han. "Back in the academy, you already dared to ignore my good intentions. Now, you even dare to disobey Senior Brother Imperial Void. You are simply courting death." He brazenly acted, attacking Ling Han, reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 2270. Primal Desolation had dared to openly attack Ling Han back at St. Origin Academy. Although he hadn't killed or injured anyone, he'd directly destroyed Ling Han's cave dwelling. But no one had managed him because he was from Sealed Love Palace, the disciple of an Empyrean. Now he was also unscrupulously attacking Ling Han, because he knew that Ling Han's strength only came from the magic cube of origin. Apart from that, he was just a 2 secret Emperor star. He was also an Emperor star, and 9 secret at that. How big of a difference was there? Thus, he attacked Ling Han without any scruples. He also wanted to touch the magic cube of origin and pry into the secrets of the laws. Ling Han didn't take it head-on. Without the magic cube of origin, he naturally wasn't 9 secret's match. The gap between them was too great. The void spirit space opened, and he transformed into millions of clones. Boom! Boom! Primal Desolation attacked wildly, but the Immortal Kings had no intention of interfering. If they wanted to, they would have done so long ago to stop Imperial Void from attacking Ling Han. Now, it was just 9 secret acting arrogantly, so they naturally wouldn't interfere. In any case, they were in the same realm as Ling Han. Ling Han constantly dodged, his expression becoming colder and colder. No matter what, he was still a member of the Immortal Region. He hoped that the Immortal Region could be protected, so an Emperor star like Primal Desolation was still very good for him. In the future, he could help the Immortal Region. This was why he hadn't attacked Primal Desolation in the neutral region. But now that he thought about it, that was simply unrealistic. When had the Sealed Love Palace ever helped the Immortal Region? He shook his head. Primal Desolation was seeking his own death. "Do you want me to get rid of this scum for you?" A voice rang out, calm and unhurried. Ji Wuming had appeared at the entrance of the palace, his hands behind his back, as he looked at Primal Desolation with disdain. Although the other party was an Emperor star, he was worthless in his eyes. "No need." Primal Desolation shouted. 9 secret killing, and 2 secret killing needed help? What a joke. Ji Wuming sighed. "Scum, I'm not talking to you. Don't flatter yourself." "What?" Primordial Desolation was stunned, and then his face instantly turned red. He never imagined that he was the trash that Ji Wuming was referring to. Due to this, he was an Emperor star genius, a genius of the 9 secrets. But in Ji Wuming's eyes, he couldn't even be considered a person. Most importantly, he really thought too highly of himself, and answered first. Now that he thought about it, it really made him blush. No. Anger. He was the disciple of an Empyrean. No one could humiliate him. Ling Han was surprised and said, "Brother Ji, you recognized me?" Ji Wuming nodded and said, "Your disguise technique is truly flawless. It should be the heaven-deceiving art of the Heaven Saint Palace. However, There aren't many people in the world who are worthy of being my opponent, and you are the only one who is at a similar realm to me. How could I not have guessed it? Indeed, if Ling Han had appeared ordinary, Nameless Ji wouldn't have been able to recognize him. But how many Emperor stars were there? Primordial Desolation was going crazy with jealousy. He knew that Ji Wuming was stronger than him, but Ji Wuming regarded Ling Han with great importance, and regarded him as an opponent. Yet Ji Wuming looked down on him, and called him trash. How could he accept this? He roared in anger, and his attacks became even more ferocious. He wanted to kill Ling Han. He wanted to use reality to tell Nameless Ji that he was much stronger than Ling Han. Ling Han's figure flashed. His power was naturally inferior to Primordial Desolation's, but the void spirit space was too mystical. Added with the regulations of time, his ability to protect himself was top-notch. He smiled and said, "There's no need. If I wanted to kill trash like him, it would be as easy as flipping my hand." Fine, fine, fine. Primordial Desolation's eyes were bloodshot. "Kill me." Ji Wuming nodded, and actually turned to leave. He didn't even want to continue fighting. Who was he? He had been a ninth heaven celestial king in the past, and had been invincible for an era. Perhaps he was even stronger than the Imperial Void Celestial King. So how could a battle between immortal palace tiers be of any concern to him? He simply didn't want Ling Han to die. After all, he had lost a very good opponent. Since Ling Han said that he was confident, he naturally left. What was there to be afraid of? Ji Wuming was incredibly carefree. His figure fluttered, and he quickly disappeared without a trace. Primordial Desolation began to accumulate power for a powerful move. His battle prowess was far superior to Ling Han's, so he naturally had enough spare time and energy to prepare a powerful move. Otherwise, in a situation where they were evenly matched, he would be seeking death by doing so. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Do you really want to die?" Primordial Desolation laughed in extreme anger. "If you have the ability to kill me, I will truly be able to die in peace." Sigh, what a waste. Ling Han sighed, and retrieved the origin energy of heaven and earth. This was a good item, that he had exchanged battle merits from the heaven and earth sacrificial altar. After activating it, it could explode with an attack on the level of a celestial king. However, the exchange price was ridiculously high. Even he had only exchanged for a few copies. Primordial Desolation's eyesight was very good. The instant he saw the origin energy of heaven and earth, his face immediately turned green. That was a great killing tool. Celestial tools needed a cultivator to activate, and without sufficient strength, it was impossible to activate them. However, the origin energy of heaven and earth was different. Like a celestial king's decree, it could be used as soon as it was open, but it was a one-time consumable. Compared to a celestial king's decree, the origin energy of heaven and earth was more useful. He only needed to use his divine sense to lock onto his opponent, and then toss it out. Primordial Desolation was indeed extraordinarily confident. He was a prodigy that could become a ninth heaven celestial king in the future. But this was a matter for the future after all. If he were to forcibly face an attack on the level of a celestial king now, wouldn't that be courting death? Even if the origin energy of heaven and earth only blasted out a destructive power on the level of a first heaven celestial king. What to do? What to do? What to do? What to do? Primordial Desolation's head was covered in cold sweat, and the chill was like a tidal wave. At this moment, he felt an unprecedented sense of anxiety. Ling Han smiled and said, "When we were in the academy, you attacked whenever you wanted. Just because you had a cowardly master protecting you, you were unbridled and did whatever you wanted. It's the same now. Let me ask you, I've made such a great contribution to the celestial region, but you attacked me. Do you still have any shame?" He was now a superhero in the celestial region, and everyone in the heavens pass worshipped the chicken slaughterer, Han Lin. However, Primordial Desolation had brazenly attacked Ling Han. This was a complete betrayal. Primordial Desolation couldn't answer. To him, there was no need to be reasonable in everything he did, because his master was Heavenly Sovereign Feng Qing. This was a reason that was greater than the heavens. But now, he finally felt isolated and helpless. "Young man, you're really arrogant. With a cold laugh, an old man appeared. He had white eyebrows and a white beard, and he was filled with the air of an immortal. His figure flashed, and he appeared in front of primordial desolation, as if he was born there. The old man's body glowed with rainbow light. It was as if he could cause the earth to crumble and stars to fall with just a slight shake of his body. Seventh Heaven Celestial King Ling Han was stunned. Although the origin energy of heaven and earth was powerful, it could at most unleash an attack on the level of a fourth or fifth heaven celestial king. There was no way it could do anything to a seventh heaven celestial king. I heard that you killed my grandson, the old man said. His eyes narrowed, and there was a shocking chill in them. Chapter 2272. The neutral region could indeed stop the other side's invasion, but an Empyrean could easily flatten it. Empyrean Scarlet Blaze wasn't lying. Even if the neutral region was destroyed and the connection point between the two worlds was shaken, it would only take several tens of billions of years at most. Although this was a long time, it was far from enough to cultivate an Empyrean. However, a great era was different. Astonishing variables might appear. Therefore, even those immortal kings who sympathized with Ling Han before were tempted to make a move. They felt that it was only right for Ling Han of the immortal region to make a sacrifice. Hand over Han Lin. A voice rang out in Heaven's Pass. No one knew who it was, but the voice grew louder and louder until it was echoed by countless people. The Heaven's Pass was very unique. There were no mountains or rivers in the city, only army camps and people everywhere. Thus, his voice traveled further and further without leaving any blind spots. It resonated with more and more people, calling out Ling Han's name in unison. Last time they were cheering, but this time, they couldn't wait to hand over Ling Han in exchange for peace. Ling Han had an indescribable feeling that made him want to laugh and cry at the same time. He was like a princess of a small country in a small world. All the people were counting on him to marry her, to sacrifice himself for the greater good. But why should he sacrifice himself? Who asked his opinion? Moreover, so what if they had a great era of peace? If they didn't rise up from their roots, then after that great era, they would definitely suffer the invasion of the other side. Moreover, why was Heavenly Venerable Scarlet Blaze so generous? It was likely that the magic origin cube would also be of great help to the foreign powerhouses. Right, there were still the rules of the immortal realm here. If the experts of the other realms could comprehend them, they might be able to find a way to stop the laws of the immortal realm from targeting them. At that time, the immortal realm would truly have no hope at all. To the immortal region, the true barrier was not the Heaven's Pass, nor was it a ninth firmament immortal king, nor was it a heavenly venerate. It was the world itself. What was laughable was that there were too many people who were blinded by the peace of a great era, unable to see further at all. I suggest that we hand over Han Lin, said a ninth firmament immortal king. The countenances of all the celestial kings changed. No matter how an ordinary person said that, they were still just an ordinary person. But it was different for an celestial king to speak up. This matter was truly placed on the table to be discussed. Meanwhile, what was ironic was that the reason they summoned Ling Han was actually to commend him. So how did it become a discussion about whether or not they should hand him over to the other side? For a moment no one spoke. Of course, the Celestial King also wanted face. Even if most people agreed in their hearts, they were not willing to express it. They just wanted to muddle through. I don't agree. The 10,000 ancient immortal king admired Ling Han the most. Previously, he had clashed head-on with the Imperial Void Immortal King, and now, he was also doing his best to protect Ling Han. This caused Ling Han to be extremely moved. Speaking of which, the 10,000 ancient immortal king was not related to him at all. This child's talent in martial art is astonishing, and he also has the magic cube of origin. He has a high chance of becoming an Empyrean. Brother 10,000, said another ninth firmament immortal king. Whether or not this child can become an Empyrean is another matter. Even if he can, it will be at least 1 or 2 epochs later. However, if we don't hand him over tomorrow, the foreign Empyreans will destroy the neutral region. Does this child still have any hope of becoming an Empyrean? The 10,000 ancient immortal king was displeased. If the neutral region is destroyed, Han Lin will only lose a part of the world, but the magic cube of origin won't be destroyed. He can still figure out the mysteries of the world from it. 10,000 ancient, just a few billion years. Is that enough? Asked an immortal king whose entire body was made of metal. His voice was like metal rubbing against each other, sharp and ear-piercing. Not enough. The 10,000 ancient immortal king shook his head. He did not exaggerate or be overly optimistic. Instead, he made a realistic deduction. Without a few trillion years, or even an epoch, it won't be enough. But at worst, we can just continue guarding it like this. The connection point between the two realms is far from stable. It's impossible for the foreign Empyreans to come over. With that said, many immortal kings looked tempted. Although they were having a hard time guarding it, wasn't Heaven's Pass still standing? If they could guard it for a few trillion years, or even an epoch, they would be able to win a future filled with hope for the immortal region. I still feel that we should hand him over, said the metal immortal king. His title was Heavy Gold, and he was also a veteran 9th firmament immortal king. Then let's vote. The 10,000 ancient immortal king could not be bothered to waste his breath. Those who agree to hand Han Lin over, raise your hand. With that, the Heavy Gold immortal king was the first to raise his hand. Following that, more immortal kings raised their hands. The 10,000 ancient immortal king swept his gaze over them and felt reassured. Less than half of the immortal kings agreed to hand over Ling Han. Shouldn't we take into account the hearts of the people in Heaven's Pass? Asked the Shun family's immortal king suddenly. That's right, the hearts of the people are against us. If we don't have the support of these new troops, the immortal realm will have no successor. How can we resist wave after wave of attacks from the otherworldly realm? The immortal kings who agreed to hand over Ling Han all said. The 10,000 ancient immortal kings smirked coldly. Usually, in the eyes of these immortal kings, even ascending origin tiers were like ants. They would not even spare them a glance. Now they actually said things that were against the hearts of the people. They were really shameless. He was just about to speak. Wang, he felt a terrifying divine sense attack him. It was as heavy as a mountain, and it was astonishingly terrifying. So what if they were 9th firmament immortal kings? They all felt a sense of helplessness. An eye appeared first, and then a face also squeezed out from the sky. Instantly, that majestic aura rose to another level. Heavenly Venerable Feng Qing! Many 9th firmament immortal kings exclaimed, a complicated expression on their faces. Heavenly Venerables were the strongest force of a realm, but Heavenly Venerable Feng Qing did not do anything for the celestial realm. He only treated the invasion of the otherworldly realm as if it did not exist. How could they not be disappointed? But who dared to reprimand him to his face? They did not even dare to discuss it in private. Greetings, my lord. All the immortal kings bowed respectfully. Ling Han also opened his eyes. The Heavenly Venerable Feng Qing had a dignified appearance, and he looked to be only in his 20s. His eyes were the most spirited, and it was as if they could see through the entire heaven and earth. This Heavenly Venerable has issued a decree. Hand over this boy in exchange for an epoch of peace in the celestial realm, the Heavenly Venerable Feng Qing said. Then the face quickly disappeared. He had sent a wisp of his divine sense just to say this. 10,000 ancient, listen carefully. My Lord Feng Qing has already issued a decree, the Heavy Gold Celestial King said. A Heavenly Venerable had directly issued a decree, so handing over Ling Han was naturally a done deal. No one could change that. The 10,000 ancient immortal king clenched his fists, and his eyes swept over the crowd. Most of the celestial kings that had previously supported him had now lowered their heads. It was clear that they did not dare to oppose the Heavenly Venerable. Who would dare to do so? Since that is the case, then capture this boy, the Heavy Gold Celestial King said calmly. He naturally disdained to make a move against a mere immortal palace tier elite. The Shun clan Celestial King jumped out. He was very willing to make a move. Ha 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 ha. Ling Han suddenly laughed loudly. His arrogance was unbridled, and all the Celestial Kings looked over. Brat, this is not the neutral territory. You are only a mere mortal, the Shun clan Celestial King said coldly. Is that so? Chapter 2273. Ling Han's gaze swept over them. A bunch of immortal kings. How arrogant. Who are you? How dare you decide my fate? I've contributed so much to the immortal region, but in exchange I became a prisoner. Haha, that's really encouraging. Don't you feel ashamed? The heavy gold immortal king said. You sacrificed yourself for the immortal region. The future generations will remember your name and leave it in history. Ling Han laughed even more wildly. He dispersed the heaven-deceiving technique and revealed his true appearance and aura. Calmly he said, Han Lin is only my alias. My real identity is Ling Han. You guys said to remember my name. But how? The immortal kings were speechless. Who would have thought that Ling Han actually came to Heaven's Pass with a fake identity? Was there really such a person? He was fighting for the immortal region, it was an honor. But now, they felt like they were slapped in the face by Ling Han. He said to remember Ling Han's name. But he even got his real name wrong. Brat, you actually dared to lie to an immortal king. You are really audacious. If you didn't do something you can't see the light of day, why would you do this? The Shun clan's immortal king said. This was really being unreasonable. But since a celestial king had spoken, it was equivalent to a golden rule. Even if it was fake, it would become real. Ling Han smiled. You really disappoint me. But still, I have Lord Wangu and the other seniors to protect me. They made me feel that the immortal region still has a tiny bit of hope and worth saving. Stop talking nonsense. Little immortal manor, shut your mouth. The Shun clan's immortal king reached out to grab Ling Han. Since the heavenly sovereign had given the order, he naturally wouldn't be afraid. He knew that Ling Han had the magic cube of origin. But this was Heaven's Pass, not a neutral region. He could only comprehend the Tao laws here. Moreover, the heaven and earth essence energy was useless to him. He was a 7th stage immortal king. Naturally, he was 90% sure that he would succeed. The primordial immortal king wanted to act. But there were even more immortal kings coldly staring at him, causing him to have no choice but to suppress his impulse. If he acted, he would be ganged up on by more than 10 immortal kings. He was not the Imperial Void Immortal King. He was not that ferocious. Do you think that I only know how to rely on the magic cube of origin? Ling Han smirked coldly, calling out to small tower in his mind. Hong, his aura suddenly rose endlessly, and he instantly broke through to the ascending origin tier, and then reached the celestial king tier. First heavenly layer, second heavenly layer, third heavenly layer. There seemed to be no end to his strength. You guys don't even know my trump card. What a joke. Ling Han coldly spoke. At this moment, his aura had already soared to the 7th level of the Heavenly Dipper realm. It was enough to contend against the immortal kings of the Shun clan. The Shun family's immortal king forcibly stopped his attack. It was not that he thought he was not a match for Ling Han, but such a change was too fucking unbelievable. This is not a neutral zone. How can Ling Han be so strong? However, Ling Han's aura was still soaring. Very quickly, he charged past the 8th level of heaven and stepped into the 9th level of heaven, and was still rising. The Black Tower fully recovered and assisted Ling Han in a resplendent battle. Before leaving the neutral zone, Ling Han had once discussed a matter with Small Tower. The discussion was precisely the possibility of encountering such a situation, and Ling Han's decision was to go all out. Small Tower was a heavenly venerable treasure. Though it had not fully recovered, it had, after all, been in the celestial realm for a very long time. It had also accumulated a large amount of energy, so it would not be a problem for it to allow Ling Han to engage in a resplendent battle. It could not allow Ling Han to unleash the battle prowess of a heavenly venerable, but above the 9th heaven celestial king tier, battle prowess close to that of a pseudo-heavenly venerable tier could do it. Ling Han looked coldly at the Shun clan's immortal king. Weren't you jumping around happily? Jump again for me. All the celestial kings were stunned. At this moment, Ling Han's power completely overwhelmed them. In fact, he was even slightly stronger than the Imperial Void Celestial King. This brat actually had a precious treasure on him. A heavenly venerable tier 1. Wang. The Black Tower floated out from within Ling Han's body. If he wanted to allow Ling Han to engage in a resplendent battle, it had to appear as well. After who knew how many years, the Black Tower appeared again. It hung above Ling Han's head, and streaks of primal chaos descended from it. The Black Tower exuded a power that surpassed the regulations of heaven and earth, and there were multiple seals on its surface that even celestial kings could not see clearly. Tower of Three Realms, a veteran celestial king exclaimed in astonishment. They had already been powerful figures 8 epochs ago, so they had naturally seen the Tower of Three Realms before. This was the heavenly venerable Fate-born's treasure. All those years ago, the heavenly venerable Fate-born had merged with the Tao and destroyed the connection point between the two realms. Meanwhile, the Tower of Three Realms had sliced through space, and its whereabouts were unknown. This treasure had been heavily damaged in the great battle with the foreign realm, and even now, one could still feel the scars left behind by the foreign realm's elites. However, heavenly venerable treasure was extraordinary, and its aura was too domineering. Oh, so Ling Han was the descendant of the heavenly venerable Fate-born. Just thinking about it made one's heart ache. In the past, the heavenly venerable Fate-born had not hesitated to sacrifice himself for the sake of the celestial realm, and had bought 8 epochs of peace for the celestial realm. But now, everyone was enjoying the benefits brought about by the heavenly venerable Fate-born's sacrifice, but he had forced his descendant into a dead end. Ha 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 ha. The celestial king laughed loudly, but there were tears of blood at the corners of his eyes. Ling Han's eyes were sinister, and he reached out to grab the celestial king of the Shun clan. Old geezer, it feels great to bully the weak. Should I let you have a taste of it now? His time was limited. Firstly, the Black Tower could not possibly support him in this state forever, and secondly, the Black Tower's appearance would soon attract those 3 heavenly venerables. So he had to end this battle quickly. The celestial king of the Shun clan was about to cry. How could he have imagined that Ling Han actually had such a move? True. Who would believe that the magic cube of origin was not Ling Han's strongest trump card? He wanted to flee. Perhaps he could escape from the hands of a 9th heaven celestial king. But in the face of battle prowess close to that of a pseudo-heavenly venerate, fleeing was completely unrealistic. Ling Han reached out, and the celestial king of the Shun clan fell into his hands. Do you regret it? Ling Han asked, his eyes cold and filled with killing intent. Regret it? The celestial king of the Shun clan nodded, deciding that a wise man knew better than to fight when the odds were against him. He really regretted it to death. He was a 7th heaven celestial king, so why did he have to be the vanguard? Now great, he was actually publicly humiliated by a mere immortal palace tier cultivator. Ling Han nodded, and suddenly clenched his fist. Pa! The celestial king of the Shun clan immediately turned into a bloody mess. In front of the power of a pseudo-heavenly venerate, he was completely unable to withstand a single blow. Quang suddenly thunder rumbled, and there was a rain of blood. There was a boundless will of grief circulating. The heaven and earth were grieving over the death of a celestial king. A 7th heaven celestial king had died just like that. It was insignificant. There was nothing that could be done. The celestial king of the Shun clan was facing a pseudo-heavenly venerate, and a mere 7th heaven celestial king could only do this. How many people were still clamoring just now? Step forward and face me. Ling Han spread his arms open. His whole body was bathed in the blood of celestial kings, and he looked like a great demon king that had walked over from ancient times. For a moment, none of the celestial kings dared to reply, although Ling Han was indeed arrogant, and he was only at the immortal palace tier, who asked him to possess a heavenly venerate level precious treasure. Moreover, it could even be revived. Even 9th heaven celestial kings would have to retreat before him. Metalhead, I'll start with you. Ling Han angrily reached out to grab the heavy gold celestial king. Do you think I'm easy to bully? The heavy gold celestial king sneered. His strength could rank in the middle among 9th heaven celestial kings, and he was definitely not someone that the celestial king of the Shun clan could compare to. Chapter 2274. Ling Han's palm descended. The heavy gold immortal king hurriedly retreated. Although his words sounded nonchalant, it was unknown just how much he feared Ling Han. That was a quasi-Empyrean, someone he absolutely could not match. Ling Han attacked. Right now, he was the strongest existence on the battlefield. Anyone's life or death was in his hands. However, he could understand most people's thoughts of self-preservation. They weren't provoked to the point of wanting to start a massacre. But a few people who were the fiercest had to be killed. He unleashed his divine abilities and pressed forward. A ninth firmament immortal king had joined the fray and helped heavy gold immortal king resolve the crisis. Ninth firmament immortal kings were the cornerstones of Heaven's Pass, and any one of them was an invaluable combat force. How could they just watch as Ling Han killed them? But quasi-celestial venerables were too strong. Even a powerful celestial king like Imperial Void could only flee in a sorry state. Moreover, he had to flee with all his might to escape. Other celestial kings didn't even have the qualifications to do so. Therefore, it only took Ling Han a few moves to knock the heavy gold immortal king to the ground. With a stomp of his foot, the ninth heaven immortal king was also reduced to a bloody mist. Kwang! A rain of blood fell from the sky, and all lives mourned. This was too shocking. A tiny immortal estate had actually slaughtered a ninth heaven immortal king. Everyone paled. Even if Ling Han had borrowed the power of the Black Tower, this kind of battle result was still incredibly stunning. Not replicable. How many Empyrean treasures are there in the world? Chaos's face darkened. He never imagined that Ling Han was actually an Empyrean's descendant. Moreover, what was stronger than him? Ling Han even had an Empyrean treasure. He can't compare. However, his expression did not change. He only moved his feet, wanting to quickly leave the hall. Now that Ling Han had revealed his trump card, he would definitely attract the three heavenly sovereigns over. Therefore, he would definitely die. Of course, he had to avoid the sharp edge. Otherwise, it wouldn't be worth it if he was killed by Ling Han. Where do you want to go? Ling Han suddenly appeared in front of him and said coldly. Chaos's expression couldn't help but change. He originally wanted to take advantage of the opportunity when the immortal kings besieged Ling Han to escape. He didn't expect that Ling Han would actually leave an eye for him in such a state, causing his plan to fail. My master is Heavenly Sovereign Feng Qing. Don't seek your own death. He didn't panic in the face of danger and threaten Ling Han. Ling Han could not help but smile. Primordial world, I thought you wouldn't be afraid. Chaos snorted. Everyone would be afraid, but everyone had different ways of dealing with fear. Some were begging for mercy, some were analyzing calmly, and some were fighting bravely. What he said just now was neither servile nor overbearing. And it was also the truth. What was wrong with it? Ling Han, don't make a mistake, Chaos said calmly. If you leave now, you still have a chance. Otherwise, you'll definitely die. Ling Han smiled and said, I don't believe you. Since he had already thought of such a situation, how could he not have thought of a way out? He reached out and grabbed at Chaos. Scram! Chaos roared angrily. The word scram actually materialized, and it emitted a supreme aura. It actually had a trace of the might of a heavenly sovereign. This was a technique that Heavenly Sovereign Feng Qing had used on him. It was used to save his life in the most dangerous of times. It could even dissolve the attack of a ninth-level immortal king. However, he wasn't facing a ninth-level immortal king now, but a quasi-heavenly sovereign Ling Han. Pung! Ling Han's large hand descended, and with a single tremble, the word scram shattered. The large hand didn't seem to stop, and with a loud rumble, it descended and grabbed Chaos. Ling Han, do you dare to fight at the same level? Chaos roared. He was truly unwilling. As the disciple of an emperor star and a heavenly sovereign, his future was limitless. He could definitely become one of the strongest in the immortal region. Fight your sister. Ling Han ignored him, and instead turned around to launch a punch at a ninth heaven celestial king, who was trying to save the Chaos desolate lands. After launching this punch, he closed in on the ninth heaven celestial king, wanting to kill him in one go. Even more immortal kings tried to stop him, but how could they stop Ling Han? Immortal blood splattered everywhere as immortal kings were killed one after another by Ling Han. The sky kept raining blood, and it didn't seem like it would stop. Chaos's expression became more and more unsightly. Ling Han could kill ninth-level immortal kings like they were dogs, and he didn't hesitate at all. Compared to him, what was he? If nothing unexpected happened, he would stop at the ninth level in the future, and that was something that would happen many years later. After this battle, a hole seemed like it was going to be blasted through heaven passing pass. The number of immortal kings that died numbered in the dozens, all of them the ones who were the happiest before. They were going to hand Ling Han over to the other side to deal with. Wang, a terrifying aura swept over, and a hole was torn open in the sky. A figure appeared, bringing with him an indescribable might. Clang, heaven and earth were furious. Lightning rained down on that person, as if the world was being destroyed. Even a ninth firmament immortal king would be badly battered by this. However, that person didn't seem to care. He treated the lightning as a drizzle. When his gaze swept across the area, the stars trembled and the winds and clouds tore. It was truly extraordinary. Heavenly Lord Fengqing, he was the first to appear. Master! Chaos immediately called out, his tone filled with pleasant surprise. As far as he was concerned, as long as Heavenly Venerate Fengqing appeared, everything would be easily resolved. Naturally, he wouldn't die. Release him. Even a ninth firmament immortal king would involuntarily obey. Heavenly Venerate Fengqing said indifferently, but his voice was filled with supreme might. This was a kind of power that surpassed regulations. Yet Ling Han merely looked at Heavenly Venerate Fengqing coldly, without a shred of reverence. Even without the Black Tower, he had once experienced power that surpassed regulations. Although he wasn't as strong as Heavenly Venerate Fengqing, in terms of quality, it was the same. He calmly said, I won't release him. Heavenly Venerate Fengqing didn't say anything else. Instead, he stretched out a hand, grabbing at Ling Han. Boom! He had already arrived in front of Ling Han, and heavily pressed down. Quang! Thunder rumbled in heaven and earth again, and countless lightning giants took form. They were all ninth firmament immortal kings. And in fact, they were infinitely close to pseudo-heavenly venerate. They were like the imperial void celestial king. But their numbers were ridiculous. These lightning giants pounced, and began a fierce attack on Heavenly Venerate Fengqing. That was tens of thousands of ninth firmament celestial kings. It was too terrifying. No wonder the imperial void celestial king had said that heavenly venerates were envied by heaven and earth, and couldn't casually move. Indeed, he was entangled by divine lightning when he appeared, and the moment he moved, he was targeted by heaven and earth, transforming into millions of lightning bodies. Ninth firmament celestial kings surrounded him, and it was boundlessly terrifying. Ling Han hurriedly retreated. A quasi-Empyrean was only a quasi-Empyrean. How could it be a match for a true Empyrean? Heavenly Venerate Fengqing didn't fear these lightning giants. He didn't even try to block them. Instead, he charged forward. Pung pung pung. Wherever he passed, all the lightning giants were smashed into pieces. They couldn't harm him at all. His speed was so fast that he caught up with Ling Han in an instant. Ling Han laughed and said, So what if I'm a celestial venerable? I'm not omnipotent. Pa! He twisted forcefully, and Great Desolation's neck was instantly broken. Under the impact of the power of regulation, Great Desolation's sea of consciousness also exploded, and he died completely. Ling Han didn't immediately kill Chaos Wilderness, because he wanted to do it in front of Empyrean Fengqing. He wanted to let her know that there were things that even an Empyrean couldn't accomplish. With a wave of his hand, he tossed the corpse of the Chaos Desolation to one side. Then his figure flashed, and he had already entered the Black Tower. Xiao, the Black Tower erupted with full speed, and shot towards the neutral zone. Do you think you can escape? Another cold voice rang out. The sky was torn apart, and a supreme existence with an astonishing aura walked out. 9-5 Heavenly Venerables. Chapter 2276. When Ling Han did things, he was never sloppy. Thus, when he had made his decision, he did not hesitate to put it into action. He strode forward. This was already the foreign realm, and it was completely desolate, and he was now only at the Genesis tier, which was the 5 lotuses of the foreign realm. His strength was pitifully low, a little like when he had just entered the celestial realm. However, his true cultivation level was at the Immortal Palace tier. Even if he recultivated the foreign realm's regulations, his cultivation speed would still be astonishingly fast. He only needed to make some minor adjustments. The Black Tower can't be used anymore. It can't be replenished by the power of heaven and earth of the celestial realm, so it can only be used at the most crucial moment. Ling Han said in his mind as he strode forward. His body arts had long since reached the ascending origin tier. Though this was not very helpful in increasing his battle prowess, it was very useful at this moment. Even without the support of the power of regulations, his speed was still very fast, enough to rival the severing mundane tier. Oh, at this point, it should be said to be 6 lotuses. Pung behind him, the neutral zone shook violently again, causing his face to pale, and he spat out another mouthful of blood. The 9-5 Heavenly Venerable was still bombarding the neutral zone, as if he wanted to forcibly charge over. A terrifying aura surged over, and at the end of the neutral zone on the foreign realm's side, a figure hundreds of millions of meters tall appeared. His whole body was wrapped in flames, indescribably terrifying. Celestial Venerable Crimson Flame, brother, what do you mean by this? Celestial Venerable Crimson Flame asked calmly. Want to break the agreement between us? The 9-5 Heavenly Venerable's divine sense immediately transmitted over. The heir of the born origin Heavenly Venerable has fled into this zone, and I must capture him. But if you destroy this realm, it will definitely destroy the stability of the connection point between the two realms, Celestial Venerable Crimson Flame stated. Empyrean Scarlet Blaze stated the stakes. Dao brother, don't forget what we are pursuing. What else can compare to that? The 9-5 Heavenly Venerable humphed and said, that brat has also obtained the magic cube of origin, and is now hiding in this zone. If we don't destroy it, who can do anything to him? And Celestial Venerable Crimson Flame faltered. He had not thought that the heir of the born origin Heavenly Venerable and the brat who had obtained the magic cube of origin were the same person. What great fortune, he said. The 9-5 Heavenly Venerate nodded. Now, do you know why I insist on eliminating him? In order to prevent a second Heavenly Lord original birth origin from appearing, this child must be eliminated. Empyrean Scarlet Blaze agreed. In that case, let's destroy this world together, Heavenly Lord 9-5 said. Of course, he could do it alone, but it would take some time, and he didn't want any accidents to happen, because the longer he stayed, the stronger the backlash from the world would be. In the end, he might even be directly suppressed by the world, and that was something he couldn't bear. Hong, the two great Empyreans attacked at the same time, bombarding the neutral region. Wah! In the distance, Ling Han continuously coughed up blood. He felt as if his body was about to collapse. Fortunately, Empyrean Scarlet Blaze thoughts were all focused on bombarding the neutral zone. Otherwise, he would have been able to discover his existence with just a casual sweep of his eyes. Half a day later, with a loud boom, the entire neutral zone was destroyed. Ling Han had almost coughed up the last drop of blood in his body. He was extremely weak. He staggered forward, trying to leave this dangerous place. Heavenly Lord 9-5 and Empyrean Scarlet Blaze both exclaimed in surprise. Although the neutral zone had been destroyed and turned into a violent vortex of energy, Ling Han hadn't escaped. This brat had the protection of the Black Tower, and was also the master of the neutral zone. So he definitely could escape before the world collapsed. How could there be no movement? Fellow Taoist, are you sure that brat entered this zone? Empyrean Scarlet Blaze asked. This was nonsense. How could an Empyrean be wrong? Heavenly Lord 9-5 shook his head and said, did you not sense that brat escaped into your place? No. Empyrean Scarlet Blaze shook his head. If a person from the celestial realm entered here, he would be like a sun in the darkness. He definitely wouldn't be able to escape my senses. Heavenly Lord 9-5's expression changed. That brat obtained the magic cube of origin, which is the fusion of the heaven and earth of the two realms. It would definitely carry a shred of the power of regulations from your side. Empyrean Scarlet Blaze was startled, and then said, fellow Taoist, you mean that brat has already comprehended the regulations of my realm and disguised himself as one of us? Otherwise, it would be absolutely impossible to explain this matter. Heavenly Lord 9-5 said with certainty. Ling Han definitely hadn't fled here just to die. Good. I will immediately send out a command to hunt down that brat. Empyrean Scarlet Blaze nodded. Even if he can comprehend the regulations of this realm, His cultivation level is bound to be incomparably low. I will monitor the world, and no matter what heresy appears, it won't escape my eyes and ears. Then I'll have to trouble fellow Taoist, Heavenly Lord 95 said with a smile. It's all for the sake of truly transcending the world. Empyrean Scarlet Blaze also smiled. Then he turned around and his massive figure immediately vanished. If there were people from the celestial realm here, they would definitely pale with fright. Heavenly Lord 95 was actually colluding with a foreign Empyrean, as if they were good friends. No wonder the three Empyreans didn't take action when the foreign realm invaded. They were like fellow Taoist brothers. And at this time, Ling Han had already run to a mountain village. The buildings here were completely different from those in the celestial realm. The houses were made of wood, and there were sharpened sticks stuck everywhere, as if the whole house had been made into a hedgehog. The people who lived here were all humanoid, but some had a single horn, while others had two horns or triangular horns. This was the only difference. Ling Han didn't enter the village, but instead found a secluded place in the nearby mountains and began to recover from his injuries. All the alchemical pills in his hands were useless. Furthermore, the indestructible Heaven Scroll was also completely useless, because it only used the regulations of the celestial realm, and it wouldn't work here. Thankfully, Ling Han's physique was really astonishing. This was solid, and wouldn't be weakened just because the heaven and earth were different, and his physique wouldn't be weakened. He was relying on his own physique to slowly recover. After all, it wasn't his real body that was injured, but rather the backlash from the heaven and earth shattering. All that was needed was time. Now Ling Han had a lot of time. He entered into the Black Tower, and the acceleration of the flow of time inside had already stopped. This would greatly exhaust the power of the Black Tower, so it became a luxury in this place. Ling Han, what happened? Hunyo hurriedly asked. Meanwhile, the Empress helped him up, using her bouncy, proud, and enchanting chest to prop up Ling Han's head. Ling Han smiled and said, I almost got into a fight with a few heavenly venerables. Everyone couldn't help but sweat profusely. This husband of theirs was really becoming more and more eloquent. Lu Yutong and the others also came over, and Ling Han explained the current situation to them, causing them to be surprised. They had actually come to the other world. Don't worry, Ling Han said with a smile, and took out the Rubik's Cube of Origin. This had originally already fused with him, and he couldn't take it out at all, because no matter how powerful he was, he couldn't rival the heaven and earth. But now that the neutral area had been destroyed, the Rubik's Cube of Origin had become a pure vessel for comprehending the regulations of the two realms. Everyone prepared to be a foreigner for many years, Ling Han said. Chapter 2277. Fortunately, the women had all advanced into the severing mundane tier, and were qualified to come into contact with the regulations of heaven and earth. Thus, they all took turns to hold the magic cube of origin, and were able to comprehend some things. Unfortunately, the acceleration from the Black Tower and the reincarnation tree could not be used. To put it bluntly, all of this was regulations, and was the power of heaven and earth. However, both were based on the celestial realm, and now that they had left the celestial realm, they would be like fish out of water, becoming rootless duckweed, and would soon run out of energy. The Black Tower still had a great use. At least it could hide, so it naturally could not be used up, and lose this most important use. If it took time, then so be it. There was no rush. Year after year, at least 300 years later, Ling Han finally recovered from his injuries, and the women also had some slight improvement in their comprehension of regulations. But who knew how much longer it would be before they could disguise themselves as foreign cultivators and openly appear in public? Thankfully, the immortals' tribulation would only come once every 100 million years, so they did not have to worry. 1,000, 5,000, 30,000 years. Time passed very quickly, and Ling Han and the women enjoyed a rare leisurely and peaceful life. If it were not for the fact that they still had too many things to worry about, they really had plans to live like this for the rest of their lives. Ling Han broke into a smile. After comprehending Tao for 30,000 years, he had finally consolidated a comprehensive foundation, and was qualified to attempt the severing mundane tier. Come. He exited the Black Tower and began to attempt the severing mundane tier, because in reality, he had already advanced into the severing mundane tier, which was equivalent to severing his cultivation level and starting from scratch. Thus, he did not need to go to some severing mundane mystery realm. Once his cultivation level was sufficient, he would naturally be able to attempt it. In a mere 3 days, he had advanced into the severing mundane tier again. Quang! Thunder rumbled in heaven and earth, and a dense mass of dark clouds gathered, with lightning interweaving. Ling Han gave a battle cry, and his figure soared into the skies, beginning to face the heavenly tribulation. This was the foreign realm's heavenly tribulation, and Ling Han was very interested, wanting to experience it properly. Boom! A thick bolt of lightning struck down like a divine sword. Ling Han raised his fist to meet it. Upon contact, he nodded internally. The foreign realm's heavenly tribulation was indeed stronger than the celestial realms. So in a battle of the same cultivation level, the foreign realm's cultivators should also be slightly stronger. No wonder the celestial realm was no match for the foreign realm's prodigies, and only the Rain Emperor, Emperor Stars, and Hunyo were exceptions, because the celestial realm's side was innately at a disadvantage. The foreign realms always said that the celestial realm was a super low level. Then what level of plane is the foreign realm? Ling Han murmured. I'm curious now. The heavenly tribulation of the foreign realm actually took a long time as well. It took about 16 hours, and when Ling Han's figure landed, he was already at the first severance. First severance? Ling Han nodded. If I return to the celestial realm now, I can easily defeat a third severance. This was extraordinary because striking the heaven and earth could only be called an emperor, and fifth severance could be called a monarch. Now Ling Han was only at the first severance, so he naturally hadn't entered monarch tier, yet he could surpass 2 minor levels and win. This was practically inconceivable. The celestial realm's power of regulation is indeed inferior to the foreign realm, but it isn't completely suppressed. Rather, there are still some advantages. The two complement each other, and that's why my battle prowess is so strong. Ling Han was very satisfied. Though he had been forced into a foreign realm, it could not be said to be a bad thing. When he returned to the celestial realm again, it was likely that even Ji Wuming would not be a match for him at the same cultivation level. It's time to go further. Ling Han strode forward, traversing the foreign realm's vast heaven and earth, appreciating the scenery of this realm. In reality, there was no good or evil in the world itself. After truly entering this realm, one would discover the beauty of this realm. However, in the foreign realm, humanoid creatures all had ox tails and long horns, while ferocious beasts were those insects. From time to time, one could see colossal worms crawling through the forest, killing similarly colossal mosquitoes, flies, and ladybugs. The overlords flying through the skies weren't eagles, but moths and cockroaches. The vegetation here was also a little special, mainly dark black. In fact, even the surging river water was leaning towards black water, making one wonder whether it was drinkable or not. Ling Han shook his head and murmured, "If this girl Hunyo knows, she'll definitely be very sad, because there's no meat for her to eat here." 3 years later, he walked out of this wasteland, and the first foreign city appeared in front of him. His first reaction was this really a city? It was basically a bird's nest. However, this bird's nest was really grand and massive, definitely not smaller than a city in the celestial realm. I'll sneak in. Though he thought so, Ling Han didn't immediately put it into action. Instead, he observed other people who entered the city. He had to know what price he had to pay to enter the city. If it required something like star stones, and he couldn't produce it, wouldn't that draw suspicion? He definitely didn't believe that the foreign celestial venerables would allow him to wander around here. He really had to be a guest. After a while, he learned that the currency used in the foreign realm was actually no different from that of the celestial realm. It was also star stones, but the heaven and earth of the two realms were different, so star stones were actually also different. If Ling Han took out star stones from the celestial realm, it was equivalent to saying that he came from another world. Fortunately, I killed many foreign celestial kings before. And I also obtained a huge amount of foreign realm star stones. Ling Han swaggered over. Lu Lian had just entered the ranks of elites in the foreign realm. He took out a star stone and threw it. And the guards didn't dare say anything at all, respectfully inviting him into the city. This was a city dominated by humans. There were people walking on two legs everywhere. Only they had horns on their heads and a tail behind their buttocks. Ling Han found a restaurant, then sat down and slowly drank, listening to everyone's idle chatter. The restaurant was always the fastest place to gather information. Sure enough, he became a wanted target. The foreign celestial venerables issued a celestial order, requesting that all the people in the foreign realm be mobilized to search for an intruder from the celestial realm. The celestial order mentioned that this person should have grasped the laws of the foreign realm, so any abnormal situation had to be reported to the higher-ups. What was different from the celestial realm was that even the most ordinary people here knew of the existence of the celestial venerables. If they worshipped the supreme gods and worshipped them, they could obtain a boost in combat power. Ling Han suddenly realized that those evil sects in the celestial realm should also worship the foreign celestial venerables. This kind of power was really powerful and could actually be used in the celestial realm. The power of faith. He suddenly realized that this was a kind of power independent of heaven and earth, born from the hearts of the people, not belonging to heaven and earth. No wonder it could operate in the celestial realm. I'm wanted, he said in his heart. Although I used the rules of the foreign realm to disguise myself, without the heaven-deceiving technique, I'm afraid that the 9 Lotus elites would be able to find out my background. So, I must avoid encountering these elites. After staying in the restaurant for a whole day, Ling Han finally left, and then searched for places like the time cultivation chamber in the city. It had to be said, though the level of this city could not be considered high, there really was such a place, but the effect of acceleration was only 10 times. This was already very extraordinary, because this city was equivalent to a 1-star city in the celestial realm. In the celestial realm, how could a 1-star city possibly have a time cultivation chamber? That was a configuration that only 4-star cities could have. Ling Han went there. Though the acceleration of 10 times was pitifully slow, it was better than nothing. He focused on cultivation and advanced rapidly. He was standing at the height of the Immortal Palace tier, and recultivating to the Severing Mundane tier only required him to complete the regulations, and added with the magic cube of origin, it would be strange if his speed was not fast. Thus, after only 3,000 years, Ling Han once again reached the 5th severance. Chapter 2278. Hunyou and the other girls also broke through to the Severing Mundane tier one after another. It couldn't be helped. Previously, they hadn't spent any effort to figure out the regulations of the foreign realm, and using the magic cube of origin like this naturally couldn't compare to Ling Han's. However, advancing into the Severing Mundane tier was good. They could conceal their identities and move freely in the foreign realm. Ling Han was now completely no different from the people of the foreign realm. There was a 6-petaled lotus flower on his forehead, and 5 leaves below. This was the most direct indicator of the cultivation level of a cultivator of the foreign realm. 6 petals meant that he was in the Severing Mundane tier, and 5 leaves meant that he had completed the 5th severance. Of course, the lotus flower could be concealed, and it was also possible not to let others notice it. After Hunyou and the other girls advanced into the Severing Mundane tier, their cultivation speed immediately increased. A major tier was a threshold, and it was the transition from the celestial realm to the foreign realm's regulations, which was too difficult. But once they crossed over, the road ahead would be smooth. Of course, Lu Yutong and the other girls were originally only at the 1st severance, so they definitely couldn't compare to Hunyou, the Empress and bewitching Maiden Row. Ling Han decided to change places. The increase of 10 times in cultivation speed was too low, and he didn't lack money. Previously, he had robbed countless celestial kings of their wealth, and now he only wanted to spend as much as he could. He first had a general understanding of the foreign realm's situation, and then set out, heading towards Fire Beacon City. This was a 5-star city, and had a time cultivation room, that was 500 times faster. With Ling Han's arrival, he had to recover his cultivation level to the immortal palace tier as soon as possible. He specially bought a carriage as a means of transportation. This trip to Fire Beacon City would take as long as 3 years, so that definitely couldn't be wasted. Furthermore, he also spent a large sum of money to build the carriage into a time cultivation room. He really didn't waste any time at all. Leaving the city, heading all the way north, Ling Han very soon discovered that aside from the regulations of darkness in the foreign realm, there was another kind of regulation. The regulations of light. Light and darkness opposed each other, and were incompatible. Where there was light, there definitely wouldn't be darkness. And where there was darkness, there wouldn't be light. It was even more opposed than water and fire, and there was completely no possibility of them coexisting. When Ling Han sensed the light rule, he entered a completely different region. The humanoid creatures here were almost no different from the people of the immortal region, just that their faces were especially sharp and long, and their eyes were shining like small suns. There was even a halo of light above their heads that emitted either gentle or dazzling light, and a pair of large white wings grew from their backs. The animals here were no longer insects but animals with wings. There were tigers, horses, and cows, giving off a gentle and intimate feeling. However, this area was not pleasant for Ling Han. The law of darkness in his body was like snow encountering fire, burning rapidly. He hurriedly steered the carriage away from this area. Realization dawned on him. No wonder he had not encountered such a creature at the border. It was because the laws of darkness and light could not coexist. That was why he had only discovered the existence of such a law now. What a strange place, really strange. Thankfully, this area was not large. Ling Han circled around, and then he discovered that there were some areas here that did not have the regulations of darkness or the regulations of light, as if they were neutral zones. In this place, Ling Han saw creatures with horns on their heads and bat wings on their backs. There were also creatures with halos on their heads and wings on their backs. The two sides were natural enemies. Though they wouldn't fight to the death, they definitely couldn't be considered friends. Ling Han asked around, and found out that the creatures with horns on their heads were collectively known as the Demon Tribe, and these fair-skinned creatures with halos on their heads were known as the Angel Tribe. As for insect-type creatures like cockroaches, they were known as the Insect Tribe, and the beasts in the areas of light were known as Holy Beasts. He traveled for a few more days, and suddenly saw divine light soaring into the skies ahead of him. There was a rich fragrance in the air, causing all of his pores to open up. The origin power in his body was stirring, as if he was about to ascend to become a celestial. Celestial medicine. His eyes lit up. This was a celestial medicine that was about to be born. A thought flashed through his mind, and he decided to go take a look. He stored the carriage into the Black Tower, and none of the women came out. They were all waiting in the Black Tower, while he strode forward, hurrying forward. It was a mountain, not very tall, and one could see the peak as far as the eye could see, and the divine light was shining from the waist of the mountain. Halt! Ling Han was just about to ascend the mountain, but was stopped by someone. He walked over, and saw that it was a young man with horns on his head. He had the same character as he did now, and his face was filled with disdain. The lords are currently enjoying tea, discussing Tao, and admiring the divine flowers. And you think you are worthy of joining in the fun? Seeing that Ling Han seemed to be a bit dazed, he shouted again. You still don't dare to scram? Could it be that you want me to make a move? After saying this, a lotus flower appeared on his forehead, with 6 petals and 4 leaves. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. Though the foreign realm and the celestial realm were enemies, in reality, there was really no difference between the creatures of the two realms. Everyone was only slightly different in appearance, and the regulations that they cultivated were also slightly different. You still dare to laugh? The young man shouted. So what if I laugh? A cold mocking voice rang out. A carriage quickly sped over, and then it came to a sudden stop. The driver of the carriage was an incomparably handsome white horse with snow-white wings on its back. These words were spoken by the coachman, and he was also a young man with snow-white wings. There was a halo on his head, and his eyes were like balls of lightning. The young man in front of Lantu revealed a trace of fear. So it's Fairy Yunhe. My apologies, my apologies. Since you know, then why aren't you scramming? The coachman Lantu said disdainfully. Lantu, I only respect Fairy Yunhe, not you, the young man from before said. My family's Lord Tala is equally famous as Fairy Yunhe. What are you so proud of? Lantu laughed arrogantly. How can Tala be ranked equally with my family's fairy? You really don't know how long your face is. The young man from before arrogantly immediately acted, leaping towards the carriage. How dare you? Boom! A palm slapped out from within the carriage. It was as clear as jade, but it also contained a terrifying power. Pung! The young man was immediately sent flying, and there were traces of blood at the corner of his mouth. Lantu, go up the mountain. A voice came from within the carriage. It was clear and melodious, but it also contained boundless arrogance. Yes, Lantu respectfully replied. His gaze swept over the young man on the ground, and a disdainful smile appeared on his face. Then he cracked his whip, and the carriage immediately began to gallop up the mountain. The young man crawled up and wiped away the traces of blood at the corner of his mouth. There was a dark expression on his face. His gaze swept over, and when it landed on Ling Han, he couldn't help but reveal an expression of anger. He shouted, What are you? Are you tired of living? He had a stomach full of anger, but he knew that it was impossible for him to take revenge on that Fairy Yunhe. This made him even more displeased, and he wanted to find someone to vent his anger on. Ling Han laughed and said, I'm just passing by to buy some soy sauce. Who did I offend? You offended me. The young man moved, grabbing towards Ling Han. His 5 fingers turned into blades. This attack was not for the sake of capturing Ling Han, but to steal his soul and take his life. Ling Han didn't have the slightest bit of goodwill towards the foreigners. Seeing that this person was so arrogant, killing intent naturally rose up in his heart. He casually struck out, and shwa, a flash of sword light surged out. Pooh! The young man's right arm was chopped off. If it wasn't for the fact that he was currently a wanted criminal, Ling Han wouldn't have been so restrained, and would have long since taken this guy's life. Ah! The young man screamed, his face filled with pain. At the same time, he was filled with disbelief. This ordinary-looking young man in front of him was actually so powerful. Chapter 2280. Ling Han's heart throbbed. Lu Yutong and the others did not have monarch tier aptitude, and originally, they definitely could not reach the 5th severance, but if they obtained the celestial fruits of the 100-fruit tree, there would be a sliver of possibility of breaking through. Though it was only a sliver, it was worth a try. However, now was not the time for the fruits to ripen. Everyone was waiting, and in the process of the fruits ripening, they could also comprehend the mysteries of the heaven and earth's evolution, which similarly had many benefits. Thus, minor characters like Long Tu would also follow up the mountain and sit at the side to observe. Ling Han sat at the side excitedly. He did not have the women come out, because their grasp of the regulations of the foreign realm was still relatively weak, and it was not certain whether they could hide it from Lu Lian, so it was better to stay inside the Black Tower for now. He asked that person for advice on how to harvest the fruits of the 100-fruit tree. That person looked disdainful. Save it. We are already extremely lucky to be able to come here, so don't have any extravagant hopes. He blabbered, first lecturing Ling Han, and then talking about the method to harvest the fruits. That was to channel the power of regulations guiding the fruits, because there were 108 fruits. Each fruit had a special regulations, and under resonance, they could be harvested. However, the difficulty lay in this resonance. Why could everyone rely on the fruits to have a sliver of hope of breaking through to the 5th severance? That was because 108 fruits corresponded to different paths, and were suitable for everyone. Ling Han stared at the 100-fruit tree, and under his concentration, he saw that there were indeed wisps of celestial qi rising, transforming into various forms, elaborating on the true meaning of Great Tao. He studied it, and found that it was indeed quite useful, allowing him to have a deeper understanding of the regulations of the foreign realm. There really is no end to learning, he thought. At first, I thought that I had merged the regulations of the two realms, and my grasp of regulations had already reached the level of sainthood. But every time, there would be new gains. Come, one really cannot be too proud. As time passed, they saw that these fruits became more and more mystical, as if they had left their original form, and really turned into the form of 100 beasts and humans, soaring, roaring, and channeling the technique of 10,000 realms. At this moment, the sound of hooves could be heard. Everyone turned around and saw a luxurious carriage speeding towards them. Those who were able to drive here were definitely people of great background. Otherwise, it would be impossible for their mounts to withstand such pressure. The coachman was an astonishingly tall man from the demon race, and the mount was a divine bull. This combination was extremely strange. How could holy beasts be related to the demon race? That symbol. Someone suddenly pointed at a picture on the carriage. It was a sun, shining with boundless light. Defei! Everyone exclaimed at the same time, looks of respect appearing on their faces. What is he doing here? That's right. He's already a 5-leaf emperor. The 100-fruit tree doesn't do him any good. Why would he want to join in the fun? Defei is incredible. It's said that he has outstanding talent, and has the chance to become an emperor star in the future. Don't ever provoke him. I've seen an emperor of the demon race being sliced into pieces by his blade of light, just because he glanced at him. Rumor has it that his brother Di Pang is even stronger. He's already an emperor star. A clan with 2 emperors, too extraordinary. His coachman is also an emperor of the demon race, and he's subdued. Humph, is he provoking our demon race? When I become a monarch tier, I'll definitely seek guidance from him. Everyone discussed animatedly. The cultivators of the demon race all looked disgusted and wary. They naturally hated the angel race, but Defei was too strong, so they didn't dare show it at all. As they spoke, the carriage door opened, and a slender man walked out. His wings were pure white, and the halo of light above his head was incredibly bright, even surpassing his eyes that were like small suns. He was dressed in luxurious robes, without a speck of dust. However, his feet were shockingly white, and probably enough to make 99% of women sigh in admiration. And what was even more shocking was that his feet were actually dyed in bright red. A sissy. Ling Han immediately labeled him in his mind. However, this person's aura was indeed astonishing. There was a white lotus blossoming on his forehead, with 6 petals and 5 leaves, indicating that he was a 5th severance. Defei's eyes swept over, and stopped on a female from the angel race. Suddenly his eyes lit up and he exclaimed, "Fairy Yin He." He leaped off the carriage and walked forwards. Scram! There were people sitting in these circles, yet he didn't leap over. Instead, he directly lashed out with his leg. Pung! As his words fell, he sent the 3 people blocking his path flying at the same time. Those 3 people spat out blood madly in midair, and when they landed on the ground, they were already panting more than they were inhaling. 5th severance. This was the most severe suppression of a monarch tier over a severing mundane tier, just like a dividing soul tier over a severing mundane tier. They were absolutely invincible. Thus, mere 2nd severance and 3rd severance were naturally sent flying with a single kick from him. Everyone was furious, especially the master of the 3 coachmen. They wanted nothing more than to immediately make a move, but when they thought that they were only 4th severance, and facing a 5th severance was basically a suicide mission, they forcefully suppressed their urge. Defei continued to advance, and this time, the people in front of him hurriedly moved out of the way of their own accord, afraid that they would also be sent flying mercilessly. Just like that, the circles of people all moved out of the way, not daring to bear his brunt at all. Defei's expression was filled with arrogance. Everyone's reaction was a matter of course in his eyes. He strode forward, and there was only one person in his eyes, and that was Fairy Yin He, a beautiful and delicate flower. Lord Defei. A few youths from the angel race came up to greet him, and like stars cupping the moon, they surrounded Defei. Towards those who were also from the angel race, Defei's patience was much better. He made an exception, and nodded towards these people. After all, a few of them even had the bearing of emperor tiers, and perhaps he could take a few as subordinates. He arrived at Fairy Yunhe's side, and with a deeply affectionate look he proudly said, "Yunhe, I've come to help you pluck the celestial fruit." Yet Fairy Yunhe didn't seem to appreciate his kindness, and calmly said, "No need, I can do it myself." Though Di Fei had been rebuffed, he didn't show the slightest bit of impatience and continued, "I naturally know that you can do it, but don't you still want to obtain one for your younger brother?" Fairy Yunhe couldn't help but feel her aura weaken. She had enough confidence that she could attract the celestial fruit, but her energy was limited after all. She had only cultivated one kind of regulation, so she could only attract one celestial fruit. It was practically impossible for her to obtain a second one. She just so happened to dote on her younger brother very much, and wanted to obtain a great fortune for her younger brother as well. Thus, she appeared to be hesitant, and her refusal was no longer resolute. Since Lord Di Fei is so kind, Fairy Yunhe should just agree. That's right. Lord Di Fei has specially made this trip, and his true feelings and sincerity are as clear as the sun and moon. The people on the side all began to persuade her, though some people said that their expressions were clearly showing jealousy, because Fairy Yunhe was really astonishingly beautiful. Chapter 2281. The appearance of the angel tribe was very similar to that of the celestial realm. They only had an extra pair of wings, a halo on their heads, and their eyes were also very bright, but all of them had snow-white skin. The men were handsome, and the women were beautiful. Fairy Yunhe was even more outstanding among them. Whether in the eyes of the angel tribe or the people of the celestial realm, she was a rare beauty. More importantly, this beauty also had astonishing talent in martial art, so men naturally flocked to her. "Then thank you, Brother D." Fairy Yunhe nodded. She could not refuse such good intentions, but she had already made up her mind. She would return the favor with a precious gift, and immediately return this favor. Di Fei's expression was filled with pride. He had already stayed at the 5th severance for many years, and not only had he pushed the light regulation that he mainly cultivated to a perfect level, he had also cultivated the other 3 regulations, reaching a considerable height. Back then, he had already activated a fruit, and used the light regulation, and the same person and the same regulation would not be effective after using it. Thus he needed to use the other 3 regulations, but this was naturally enough. Even if there were others who also cultivated these corresponding 3 regulations, who could compare to him? He was a 5th severance monarch tier. He spoke with assurance, and spoke of his experiences in these years. He had entered various historical sites, and there were many dangers, but also countless rewards, causing everyone to listen with rapt attention. Even Fairy Yunhe couldn't help but look at him with her beautiful eyes, revealing an expression of fascination. Firstly, he was eloquent, and spoke captivatingly, and secondly, he had indeed experienced many amazing things, making them yearn for him. He became the center of attention, and a few women showed expressions of adoration. As long as Di Fei crooked a finger, they would probably immediately sit on his carriage and follow him to the ends of the world. These women were from the angel tribe, so be it. But the key was that the women from the demon tribe all looked lustful, their eyes watery, wanting nothing more than to throw themselves into his arms, causing the men of both races to go crazy with jealousy. But what could they do? This was a monarch tier, a man who was destined to become a king, and could even reach the height of 13 or 14 lotuses. The worship of elites transcended race. "The fruit has ripened," someone called out. Suddenly, everyone's eyes turned to the 100-fruit tree, as if Di Fei had instantly lost his appeal. Compared to that, what is more important than personal strength? Di Fei could not help but feel displeased. However, he immediately thought about it. Why did he have to vent his anger on a tree? He shook his head and stood up, wanting to immediately resonate with the celestial fruit. After all, there were still many emperors here, who had the qualifications to attract the celestial fruit. If he was a step too late, the fruit would definitely be snatched away. He had only grasped 3 additional laws. Di Fei activated his laws, and started to attract the immortal fruits. In just a moment, he had locked onto an immortal fruit. It was a fire-type immortal fruit that had a slight reaction under his laws. He immediately went all out and poured all his spirit into it. Wung wung wung, the fruit trembled slightly. It was shaped like a boiling flame, both beautiful and dangerous. This could give cultivators who cultivated fire regulations a sliver of hope of advancing into the fifth severance, and was incredibly valuable. Come on, Di Fei thought to himself. He actually only needed one fruit to gain Goddess Yunhe's favor. This was a celestial fruit. Even if the 18 Lotus Kings had placed restrictions on it, and it could only be picked for severing mundane tears, it was still not something that could be done in the blink of an eye. He continued to activate his regulations, causing the resonance between the two fruits to become stronger and stronger. He couldn't help but show a smug expression. When he had been at the fourth severance, he had spent 3 days and 3 nights to attract a celestial fruit, but now, he only needed about 2 hours to do it. He had improved who knew how many times. When 2 hours passed, that fire-type celestial fruit trembled violently, as if it was about to break free from the tree branch and pounce towards him. Di Fei smiled. He was about to succeed. Pooh! The celestial fruit trembled lightly, and suddenly broke free from the fruit, shooting out. Yet Di Fei's expression suddenly changed, because this celestial fruit was actually not flying towards him, but was instead flying in another direction. How was this possible? He was incredibly shocked because he had only discovered at the last moment that another will had invaded, and then easily attracted the celestial fruit, allowing the celestial fruit to escape. This feeling was really too bad. It was as if he had been flirting with a girl for a very long time, and was just about to have sex with her at night. Yet in the end, another man suddenly appeared and seduced the girl away. Di Fei followed the trajectory of the celestial fruit, and when his eyes landed on a person, he almost spluttered. That was because that person was actually holding a pile of celestial fruits in his hands. Piles and piles. Not only him, but a considerable number of people were also staring at Ling Han, as if they were looking at a monster. It was just that he had been too focused on attracting the celestial fruits previously, so he had not noticed the looks of the others. It had only been 2 hours, and this guy had actually attracted several dozen celestial fruits. What kind of terrifying speed was this? No wonder the other had only just turned his attention to him, and he had already snatched away the celestial fruit that he had been communicating with for a long time. Di Fei gritted his teeth and resisted the urge to make a move. Instead, he continued to communicate with the second celestial fruit. Before he arrived, Ling Han had already picked so many celestial fruits, so he should have already exhausted all the regulations he had mastered. He tried to attract them, and very soon, a celestial fruit responded, which made him feel much more at ease. He was really afraid that all the fruits corresponding to the 3 regulations he had mastered had already been taken away. However, a tragedy happened again. A powerful divine sense swept past, and the fruit that he was communicating with was instantly cut off. Di Fei did not even need to turn his head. Just by looking at the trajectory of the fruit, he could be sure that it was definitely that person. Damn it. You could have picked any fruit, and yet you had to fight with him. Moreover, you had already picked so many. So why were you still so greedy? He immediately wanted to make a move, but when he remembered that he still had one more regulation that he had not activated, he forcibly suppressed his anger and went to activate the last regulation. Then he immediately realized that none of the celestial fruits resonated with him. The 108 fruits on the 100-fruit tree corresponded to 108 regulations. But in reality, the total number of regulations was not that high. Instead, many of them were split from a single great Tao. For example, the fire elemental regulation was split into 9 great Taos, which corresponded to 9 great Tao fruits. The regulations that each person cultivated could always be similar to one of the celestial fruits. Whether or not they could be attracted depended on the degree of similarity and the depth of one's own understanding of the regulations. This time, he did not attract any of the celestial fruits, which could only mean one thing. All the fruits corresponding to the regulations had already been picked by someone else. Only one person could have done it so quickly. Ling Han. You're too much. Di Fei stood up abruptly and shouted at Ling Han. Hand over all the fruits, and then scram down the mountain. That's right, hand them over. The others also shouted. You alone had nearly 60 celestial fruits, so how the hell were you going to split them? Chapter 2282. Ling Han's eyes swept over, and he only smiled faintly. Why? The women indeed didn't need over 60 celestial fruits, but this thing could give one a sliver of hope to break through to the fifth severance. If they were left in the foreign realm, wouldn't they be creating trouble for the celestial realm? So, even if he threw them away, he wouldn't leave them for the foreign realm. Furthermore, eating one was only a sliver of hope, so wouldn't eating a few more increase the hope? To say nothing of over 60. Even if all 108 celestial fruits were given to him, Ling Han wouldn't complain that it was too much. If you don't hand it over, die, Di Fei said harshly. The white lotus on his forehead shone, holy and resplendent. The angel tribe and the demon tribe weren't on good terms in the first place. If they didn't have a common goal, they would have long since fought to the death. But if they encountered a conflict of interest, they would still fight until their heads bled. Die, the others all called out. Not just the angel tribe, but even the demon tribe was calling out. In the face of interest, whatever race, whatever righteousness was all fake. Ling Han chuckled and said, There are many who want to kill me. You guys are too far behind. These words weren't the slightest exaggeration. The celestial venerables of two realms were hunting Ling Han, but he was still alive and kicking, and would become even stronger. In the future, he would become a celestial venerable, or even surpass a celestial venerable, beating down celestial venerable Feng Qing and the others. Di Fei naturally wouldn't believe it. Being able to come here meant that the other party was only a severing mundane tier. So he, a fifth severance monarch tier, definitely wouldn't be defeated. Taking a step back, even if the other party was also a fifth severance monarch tier, he firmly believed that he would be superior. Seeking death, Di Fei attacked brazenly. An incredibly bright and resplendent light surged out, turning into a sword that sliced towards Ling Han. Although Ling Han had already come into contact with foreign cultivators, he had only come into contact with the regulations of darkness. Thus, he couldn't help but be a little more interested in this monarch tier of the light race, wanting to know what exactly was so special about this regulation. Thus, he didn't use much power, and casually moved to play around with Di Fei. The present Ling Han was too strong. The celestial realm's level was indeed inferior to the foreign realm, but it wasn't completely without merit. There were still things in the regulations that the foreign realm didn't have. Complementing the two was the best way. If he returned to the immortal palace tier, he wouldn't be an emperor star anymore. Instead, he would be an existence that surpassed the emperor star. And he could be called the imperial moon, imperial sun, or something like that. In any case, he would be fucking awesome. Di Fei unleashed his godly prowess as the rules of light revolved. It was as though he had turned into a war god of light, completely suppressing Ling Han. His face was full of arrogance. He was the most powerful emperor after all. Ling Han definitely wasn't his opponent. Only for some reason, the other party was extremely strange, actually grasping countless natural laws, picking more than 60 immortal fruits. But as time went on, he started to feel slightly anxious, because no matter how much he occupied the upper hand, he was unable to suppress Ling Han and obtain victory in one go. How could this guy be so tenacious? He wondered in his mind, but when he thought that Ling Han should also be a monarch tier, it was reasonable that he hadn't been immediately defeated by him. The others were also stunned. They hadn't imagined that Ling Han was so strong, and was actually also a monarch tier. And that carriage driver that had previously guided Ling Han was even more speechless. He had even told Ling Han not to have any extravagant fantasies, but he hadn't imagined that the latter was actually powerful to such an extent. Sword of great light, slay all evil. Di Fei roared loudly, and suddenly drew a treasured sword. Its whole body was blazing bright, as if it was formed from pure light, and was extremely mystical. He brandished the sword and slashed at Ling Han. Xiao light blossomed, blinding one's eyes. A strange feeling rose up in Ling Han's heart. It was as if there were countless beautiful fairies waving at him, asking him to willingly accept death. And then he could ascend to the ultimate paradise, where he would be carefree, no more battles, and only be able to enjoy himself. He immediately opened his eyes, and an astonishing cold light burst forth from them. This regulation of light had the effect of bewitching one's heart. Pa! The sword of light descended, but it was directly grabbed by Ling Han. With a light shake, he instantly snatched the sword of light. He saw that the material of this sword was very special. It actually wasn't material, but was purely a fusion of regulations. A special refining method, Ling Han thought. He raised his head, and saw that the mouths of everyone in the surroundings were wide open. So wide that an egg could be stuffed in. The others were naturally stunned. Fuck, was there anyone like you? Just now, you looked like you were no match for him. But with a casual grab, you snatched his weapon away. Didn't you see Di Fei's dumbfounded expression now? Ling Han chuckled and said, My apologies, I've scared everyone. Just now those who wanted to kill me take a step forward. Let us settle the score. Schwa. At least 90% of the people took a step back in unison. And instantly, a few people with slow reactions were pushed out. No, it wasn't me. Seeing this, one person hurriedly shook his head, pointing at himself as he tried his best to explain. The others were much smarter, and they hurriedly retreated. Di Fei suppressed his anger and said, Sell me a fruit. You can name the price. He had promised to obtain a celestial fruit for Fairy Yun He, but now he definitely couldn't personally pluck it, so he could only buy it from Ling Han. Others definitely wouldn't sell it. It was just a single fruit. Ling Han was surprised and asked, Didn't you want to kill me? Di Fei avoided answering. If he could kill Ling Han, he naturally couldn't be bothered to waste his breath. But who asked him to not be able to? He humphed and said, Name your price. Ling Han shook his head and said, I have a better idea. Why don't I kill you? Then all your things will belong to me. Haha. Di Fei laughed proudly. He was a monarch tier, and his older brother was an imperial star, destined to become a supreme elite of the 18 lotuses. Who would dare to kill him? Ugh. His laughter came to a screeching halt, because Ling Han had already grabbed him by the neck and lifted him into the air. He had supreme strength, but in Ling Han's hands, he was like a little chick completely powerless. He couldn't help but be astonished. Just how much weaker was he compared to Ling Han? He couldn't even withstand a single blow. Seeing Ling Han's menacing killing intent, Fairy Yin He spoke up. Sir, please show mercy. Di Fei's brother is an emperor star, and he's currently at the 9th layer of the 8 lotus tier. He possesses invincible might. Ling Han smiled and said, Then I should just swallow this loss and let this brat ride all over me. Why must you fight for a moment of pride? Fairy Yin He advised. It wasn't that she had any feelings for Di Fei, but that she was very wary of Di Pang. This was a true genius, and it was said that many ancestral kings had extended olive branches to him, wanting to take him as a disciple. Then I'll think about it, said Ling Han. But then he blinked, and then said, All right, I've thought about it. You call that thinking? Fairy Yin He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Although this person in front of her was a demon, he didn't have the viciousness of a demon at all. He was more like a scoundrel. Then what do you think, sir? She asked patiently. Kill him, of course. Ling Han smiled, revealing a row of snow-white teeth. With a twist of his right hand, Di Fei's neck was snapped, and he instantly stopped breathing. Now the world is at peace. He deftly searched Di Fei's spatial divine tool, then casually tossed him to the side and walked towards the others. What do you guys think? Chapter 2284. In the Celestial Realm, Ling Han had killed over 100 celestial kings from foreign lands and obtained an astonishing amount of battle merit, and he had also exchanged countless godly metal from the heavens, enough to advance the devouring metal to the level of divine metal. Previously, when he had fled into the celestial realm, he had never had time to care about the divine demon sword, and it was not very urgent. Now that he had free time, he finally thought that it was time to upgrade this celestial sword to its proper level. Because there was really too much godly metal, When piled together, it was even larger than a star. Thus, Ling Han was upgrading the divine demon sword in the Black Tower. Otherwise, if he had to take out so much godly metal, there would be no need for this neutral zone. Even if the divine demon sword's devouring ability was astonishing, it still took 10 days to finally advance to the level of 9 stars. And then another 20 days later, it became 10 stars of pseudo-divine metal. At this level, the divine demon sword was close to full, and it only needed one more step to become divine metal. However, Ling Han fed this sword for another 3 days, but this guy did not devour anymore. There was clearly still a lot of godly metal. Ling Han pondered for a moment, and suddenly thought, could it be that the divine demon sword could only complete its breakthrough in the real world? He exited the Black Tower, and suddenly, the divine demon sword shone brightly. Multiple symbols flashed on the blade, with an indescribable might. Boom! Dark clouds immediately gathered in the sky, and lightning blazed. The heavenly tribulation was coming, but this time, its target was not Ling Han, but the sword in his hand. Ling Han laughed loudly, and his figure flew up, leaving this town, and arriving at the uninhabited outskirts. Kwang! The first bolt of lightning had already fallen, striking the divine demon sword with incredible accuracy. Ling Han greeted it with a slash, and this bolt of lightning was instantly split in two. However, Ling Han was also electrocuted until his whole body was numb, even if he was only grazed slightly. The divine demon sword was about to advance to celestial tool, and the heavenly punishment it received was also celestial king level. This was a power that Ling Han was far from being able to match. Holy shit! Ling Han said in his heart. This heavenly tribulation was too frightening. Just a shockwave was enough to make him feel unbearable. Next, the power of the heavenly tribulation would increase step by step. How could he withstand it? Right at this moment, the divine demon sword trembled slightly, and suddenly broke free from Ling Han's hand. Xiao! It soared into the sky. It was actually actively resisting the heavenly tribulation. Ling Han pondered for a moment. Unless he used the Black Tower, he wouldn't be able to interfere at all. In that case, he'd better forget about it. This was a hurdle that the divine demon sword had to overcome. If it couldn't compete, then it wouldn't be worthy of being called divine metal. Kwang kwang kwang. Bolts of heavenly tribulation descended one after another, and they were incredibly terrifying. Cracks also appeared on the divine demon sword, and it was as if it couldn't be transcended. It has to be. The divine demon sword had been with him for so many years, and it also contained his will of martial art. Though it was still very weak now, it had inherited Ling Han's beliefs. He would never give up, and he would never retreat. The battle prowess of the divine demon sword was completely insufficient to resist the heavenly tribulation. It was being tempered by lightning, and whether it would shatter into pieces, or complete a qualitative leap into divine metal, would depend on its luck. The heavenly tribulation of the foreign realm was even more ferocious. Though Ling Han was confident in the divine demon sword, he couldn't help but feel a sliver of worry. Xiao! A figure flew over. This was a tall and slender young man from the angel tribe. He had a pair of snow-white wings that were incredibly holy, and he had a head of long golden hair. His features were handsome enough to make others jealous. The young man laughed loudly and said, "My luck isn't bad. There's actually a celestial end sword that has appeared to undergo heavenly tribulation. Is this a gift that the heavens have given to me, Richie?" The young man laughed loudly. He had come here because he had seen a terrifying sea of lightning. He had initially thought that this was an elite from the Nine Lotus tribe that wanted to become a king or ancestor. He had never thought that it would actually be a sword. This is an ancestral tool. He was incredibly excited. An ancestral artifact was an immortal artifact of the immortal realm. Although the level of the foreign realm was a bit higher than the immortal realm, the number of ancestral artifacts was still incomparably small. Now an ancestral artifact had actually appeared in front of him. Moreover, it did not have an owner. Ling Han, a mere 6 lotus cultivator, was naturally nothing to him. Huh. He stared at Ling Han. He felt as if there was something hidden in Ling Han's body, and it made him feel indescribably uncomfortable. "Kill yourself," Richie said indifferently. He didn't like the feeling that Ling Han gave him, but he couldn't be bothered to investigate further. As long as he died, everything would be fine. Ling Han stared at the other party. This was a man with 3 leaves of the 7 lotus, which meant that he was an earth soul in the dividing soul realm. No wonder he dared to look down on him so much. Lu Yin's heart trembled. As expected, even an earth soul would have a hard time deceiving a simple disguise. This man's expression of disgust was exactly the same as the one he had seen in the celestial realm. This kind of disgust came from the heavens and earth. There was no other reason for it. Kill yourself? That's pretty difficult. I really don't know how to do it, Ling Han said with a smile. Why don't you demonstrate it for me? Richie faltered. At first, he had thought that Ling Han would immediately cry and beg for mercy. He had never imagined that he would actually retort. He was really quite bold. If it weren't for the fact that you're so annoying, I could take you in as my subordinate. It's the most interesting to subdue an unruly person, he said calmly. Unfortunately, I don't have the mood to do that now. He suddenly moved and attacked Ling Han. This was a strange battle, but since his opponent was already charging at him, there was naturally no reason for Ling Han to wait for death. His figure immediately flashed, and he dodged this attack. He didn't know who this young man was, but he didn't want to cause any trouble. After all, he wanted to keep a low profile. After these few thousand years, Ling Han had already completely grasped the regulations of the foreign realm, at least at the severing mundane tier. His body could be divided into tens of thousands. This was a weakened version of the void spirit space, but it could also be said to be a strengthened version. It was weakened because his present cultivation level was too low, so it definitely wouldn't be as powerful as when he used his second secret. However, if it was strengthened, it would be because he had fused the regulations of the 2 realms, causing the void spirit space to become even stronger at the severing mundane tier. Interesting. You were actually able to dodge one of my attacks. However, that's the only time, Richie said with a smile. However, he was completely unconcerned. There was already an insurmountable gulf between the dividing soul tier and the severing mundane tier, let alone the fact that he was a 3-leaf 7 lotus tier elite. He attacked again, his fingers turning into countless blades that shot towards Ling Han. Ling Han's temper definitely couldn't be considered good. Just then, he had told himself to keep a low profile, so when he saw Richie's overbearing attitude, his anger instantly surged to his head. How could he still hold back? He clenched his fist and counterattacked Richie. You overestimate yourself, Richie sneered coldly. In his eyes, Ling Han's actions were naturally like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. It was only a meaningless struggle in a moment of despair. Pung under this strike, Richie instantly stumbled back in retreat, and Ling Han was also in a similar situation. Richie's expression instantly changed. Ling Han was actually able to fight on even footing with him. It should be known that he was a 3-leaf 7 lotus tier, and a king tier at that. Even if Ling Han was a 6 lotus 5-leaf monarch tier, his battle prowess would at most be a 7 lotus 2 lotus tier. How could he possibly be a match for him? Moreover, there was a strange aura circulating in Ling Han's body, causing him to involuntarily feel a sense of disgust. This made him want to kill even more. Chapter 2285. You must have some treasure on you. Richie stared at Ling Han. Otherwise, I don't believe a 6 lotus 5-leaf cultivator can defeat me. Ling Han shrugged and said, That's because you're inexperienced. You must have obtained an ancestral king's treasure. A covetous look flashed across Richie's face. Otherwise, it would not make sense for an ancestral weapon undergoing tribulation and a young man with extraordinary battle prowess to possess it. However, an ancestral king had many tricks up his sleeve. He might be able to grant a cultivator with battle prowess that was above average. All of this is mine. Richie charged at Lu Yin. The angels and demons were not on friendly terms to begin with. It was normal for them to fight and kill each other. Ling Han snorted. His killing intent surged as well. He attacked decisively and mercilessly. What was this about keeping a low profile? He had no concept of that. Boom, boom, boom. The 2 of them fought fiercely. If Ling Han could unleash his full strength, he would be able to kill this opponent effortlessly. However, he could only use the other realm's rules now. His battle prowess was limited to a 7 Lotus 3-leaf cultivator, which was similar to Richie. Hence, although the two of them fought fiercely, it was difficult to determine the victor. Holy light illuminates, all realms are blessed. Richie roared and unleashed a powerful move. In an instant, the boundless power of light surged forward. It was as though the entire world was illuminated. It was warm and comfortable. However, Richie charged out from within the holy light, seizing the opportunity to take Lu Yin's life. Ling Han's will was extremely firm. This did not affect him in the slightest. He merely threw a punch that carried the vicissitudes of time. Lu Yin used the law of time to slow Richie's punch down. Damn it! Richie roared. He unleashed the law of light with all his might, immediately expelling the law of time. His speed skyrocketed. The law of time was superior to all other laws. However, Richie's realm was far above Ling Han's. Naturally, he could contend with the law of time by unleashing the law of light at full power. However, it took a toll on him. He panted heavily. He felt he had less than half of his soul power left. If this went on, he would run out of energy. This was too frightening. A mere 6 Lotus cultivator could actually exhaust the strength of a 7 Lotus cultivator. He didn't dare to recklessly attack again. Instead, he focused on defense to conserve his power. At the same time, he waited for the divine demon sword to complete its tribulation. As long as he could snatch this ancestral tool, killing Ling Han would be a piece of cake. This strategy worked. No matter how monstrous Ling Han was, he was still an entire major realm lower than Ricky. He could only suppress Ricky, but not heavily injure him. If this scene was seen by others, they would definitely be extremely shocked. This definitely broke the iron law of martial art. Almost a day later, the thunderclouds in the sky suddenly retracted. Wang! The divine demon sword shone brightly, and more cracks appeared on its blade. Then it suddenly shattered, and countless pieces of metal fell from the sky. Then, a new sword appeared, and it was as if it could easily tear the heavens apart. The divine demon sword had completed its advancement. It was now a celestial tool. Ha 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 ha! Ricky laughed loudly, and suddenly flew up, grabbing toward the divine demon sword. This is mine! He had been waiting for this moment, and his pounce was indeed faster than Ling Han's. Ling Han didn't stop him, and allowed him to grab the divine demon sword. Die! Ricky waved his sword in attack. Even if he couldn't activate the ancestral tool, the ancestral tool's sharpness alone was enough to crush all living beings. What couldn't it cut? The sword attacked, and combined with Ricky's confident appearance, it was like a celestial being. Ling Han only smiled and said, "Sword come." Xiao. Ricky felt his right hand tremble, and the ancestral tool actually left his hand. What? He mouthed, an expression of indescribable shock on his face. This was an ancestral tool. It definitely couldn't recognize a 6 Lotus cultivator as its master, not even a 9 Lotus cultivator. Moreover, it couldn't be activated without reaching the level of an ancestral king. Thus, he was extremely confident that he would win if he could snatch the divine demon sword. He had never thought that Ling Han would actually be able to control an ancestral tool. This was practically inconceivable. He couldn't help but tremble. If the ancestral tool unleashed its might, even 100 million of him wouldn't be enough to kill it. Ling Han broke into a grin and said, "Don't be nervous. This isn't an ancestral tool. It's just that the sword itself has reached the level of an ancestral tool." Celestial tools and weapons forged from divine metal were two different things. However, normally speaking, even celestial kings would find it difficult to obtain divine metal. Of course, if it was forged into a celestial tool, it was actually a completely different concept. Ricky's heart calmed slightly, but he still felt an indescribable fear. Although it wasn't an ancestral tool, its sharpness was the same. There was no need for him to directly strike it. A streak of sword chi was already incredibly terrifying, and was enough to tear him apart. A thought flashed through his mind, and he suddenly turned to run. He wouldn't think about this ancestral tool anymore. At least not in the short term. Ling Han unleashed his void spirit space, and hurriedly chased after him. He chuckled and said, "I haven't had enough yet. Why are you in such a hurry to leave?" Ricky didn't answer, and only continued to run as fast as he could. However, he wasn't as fast as Ling Han, and he was quickly caught up. He only saw a streak of cold light shoot toward him, causing all the hair on his body to stand on end. He hurriedly turned around and threw a punch. His soul power condensed into regulations and transformed into a divine light fist that shot toward Ling Han. He didn't seek to wound his opponent, and only hoped to delay Ling Han for an instant so that he would have enough time to escape. Shua! The sword chi unleashed by the divine demon sword swept over, and the divine light fist was immediately sliced in two. The sword chi didn't stop, and continued to slash forward. With a pu sound, Ricky was forcefully sliced into two. He died a swift death. Ling Han was also speechless. It should be known that his and Ricky's abilities were about the same, yet he possessed the ability to insta-kill his opponent only with an extra sword. Thinking about it again, this made sense. If the divine demon sword really was a celestial tool, then it would be able to easily kill ascending origin tiers. Although it wasn't at the level of regulations now, it was forged from divine metal, after all. If it didn't have great might, would it still be qualified to be called a celestial tool? Ling Han shook his head and walked over to search Ricky's body. Since he had already killed him, there was all the more no need to be polite. Ling Han released a surprised sound. Ricky naturally had a spatial god tool, but he actually had a scroll hidden on him, and hadn't stored it in his spatial god tool. At first, he had thought that this was a decree, and was wondering why that guy hadn't used it before. However, he soon discovered that something was wrong. That was because he couldn't open this scroll, and he couldn't store it in his black tower or spatial god tool, either. At this moment, he fished out another scroll from his body. This was a scroll that he had obtained from a mountain bandit's lair when he had just entered into the celestial realm. Because he couldn't open it, nor could he store it in his black tower, he had thought that it was something incredible, and had kept it by his side all this time. However, in reality, this thing really wasn't the slightest bit useful. Now he had actually obtained a second scroll in the other world, being able to appear in a mountain bandit's lair, and in the possession of a 7-lotus cultivator, seemed to mean that this item wasn't valuable. But even the black tower couldn't store it. So how could it be an ordinary item? Strange, what the hell is this lousy thing? Ling Han held a scroll in each hand. In the past there had only been one scroll of little value, but now there were two. Fine, he had become a chicken now. Chapter 2286. In the past, Ling Han hadn't done too many tests on the first scroll, and gradually forgot about it. Now that he had it again, he couldn't hold back his curiosity anymore. He stabbed with the divine demon sword, and when the tip of the sword touched the scroll, whong, a shocking light shone, causing his hand to go numb, and the divine demon sword almost flew out of his hand. This he was shocked. This scroll was really a bit fierce, even matching the sharpness of a celestial tool. He scratched his head. How could he open the scroll? He was too curious. Ling Han thought for a long time, and still put the two scrolls away. If he didn't touch them, they were no different from ordinary paper, and he couldn't feel anything special at all. I'll think about it later. Right now I'll modify the heaven-deceiving technique. He entered the Black Tower, and comprehended under the reincarnation tree. The women had already done so, but the price was a large amount of star stones. In any case, they had a lot of star stones, so they didn't have to worry about running out in a short time. After spending millions of years under the reincarnation tree, Ling Han finally succeeded in modifying the heaven-deceiving technique. Of course, he had the help of the magic cube of origin. Otherwise, he couldn't have reached such a height in regulations. He passed the modified heaven-deceiving technique to the women. After they cultivated it, they might not be able to bully celestial kings, but they should have no problem bullying ascending origin tiers. The women continued to cultivate, and Ling Han returned to the town. Fairy Yin he had already waited for him for many days, but she wasn't here now, and had long to wait there. Greetings, my lord. When it was Ling Han's turn, Long Tu immediately bowed respectfully. He knew that Ling Han was a monarch tier, and he had to be respectful to such an existence. When it was a foreigner bowing to him with a respectful expression, Ling Han felt an indescribable strangeness, but his expression didn't change. He nodded slightly and said, "Your master has broken through to the 5-leaf stage." "Yes." Long Tu immediately straightened his back. 5-leaf. From now on, he had advanced into the ranks of monarch tiers, and was destined to become an ancestral king. Following such a master was naturally glorious. Ling Han smiled. They were just monarch tiers, and he had killed who knew how many. He had even killed several emperor stars. He asked, "Where is your master?" "My family's ferry has been waiting for many days. Please follow me," Lanta said respectfully once again. In a small forest outside the town, a luxurious carriage stopped by the side of the road. Around the carriage were a dozen or so people sipping tea and discussing the Tao. Fairy Yun, he was like the moon surrounded by the stars, receiving everyone's flattery. She, on the other hand, was all smiles and appeared to be at ease. These people were all angels. All of them handsome men and beautiful women, a type of visual enjoyment. "Fairy, isn't that person a little too ostentatious? He actually made Fairy wait for so many days," someone said unhappily. "That's right. Just what kind of person is our Fairy Yun he? You shouldn't have. Even if the fairy is kind and unwilling to speak, we still have to seek justice for the fairy." Everyone started talking at once, trying their best to belittle Ling Han. Of course they were jealous, because they knew that if they were late for so many days, Fairy Yun he would definitely not wait for them. Fairy Yun he only smiled faintly, an expression of pride on her face. Now that she had advanced into the 5th severance, it was the time when she was the most high-spirited. She thought that the gap between her and Ling Han had already infinitely narrowed, and had even surpassed him. Yes, Di Fei had indeed died at Ling Han's hands, but 5th severance monarch tiers also had differences in strength. Now, she only felt that she was incredibly strong, and completely possessed strength like Ling Han's. From the 4th severance to the 5th severance was equivalent to going from the 4th severance to the dividing soul tier. This step was naturally astonishing, and it was no wonder that she felt so good about herself. She really wanted to spar with Ling Han now. Right at this moment, they saw Lanta lead a person over. What a demon! Everyone showed expressions of hatred and disdain. Which angel tribe did not hate the demon race? The power of darkness and light that both sides cultivated were natural enemies. Being able to barely coexist peacefully was only achieved under the pressure of the heavenly venerables. They had never thought that the person that Fairy Yin he was patiently waiting for was actually a demon. Fairy Yin he nodded. He is indeed from the demon race. When she wanted to introduce Ling Han, she suddenly realized that her understanding of Ling Han was practically zero. She didn't even know his name. "I forgot to ask for your name," she asked Ling Han. Ling Han's thoughts turned. "I am Tyrant." When everyone heard this, they all gritted their teeth. This guy was really shameless, actually calling himself Tyrant. Some names could not be randomly given. For example, you could not casually call yourself Sword King, Sword Emperor, or something like that. Otherwise, there would definitely be people who used swords that would come to challenge you. The name Tyrant was even more ridiculed. Anyone who heard it would feel displeased. "Tyrant, right? Do you dare to spar?" Someone challenged Ling Han. Ling Han cracked a smile. "Of course I can. But those who have fought with me will mysteriously call me father." Everyone was dumbfounded at first, and then came to a realization. They had been beaten to the point of trembling. Calling him Tyrant, wouldn't that be calling him father? Why was this guy's mouth so sinister? Taking advantage of others right from the start. "Ziqian, stop." Fairy Yin he hurriedly stopped him. This challenger was only a 4th severance king tier. And against Ling Han, he was practically a piece of cake. Furthermore, Ling Han even dared to pinch Di Fei to death. So was there anyone that he did not dare to kill? That challenger naturally would not submit. How could he cower in front of a goddess? He humphed and said, "Don't worry, Fairy. I will not go too far." Xiao. He did not wait for Fairy Yun he to say anything, and had already leaped out. Everyone only felt a blur before their eyes. And then they saw that the challenger's neck had been gripped by Ling Han. Ling Han released a slight killing intent from his body, and instantly caused that challenger to tremble all over. He said in a trembling voice, "Tyrant, tyrant, tyrant, tyrant." In everyone's ears, he was indeed calling him father. This person was really too despicable, actually giving such a name. Fairy Yin he stood out and said, "Brother Tyrant, I will battle with you." Ling Han's interest waned. He had even defeated a 7 Lotus 3-leaf King tier. So how could he have any interest in battling a 6 Lotus Monarch tier? He merely yawned, and casually tossed that challenger to the side, saying, "Fine, I'll exchange a few moves with you." Everyone was very angry. Ling Han was clearly also in the Severing Mundane tier, and actually dared to speak so boldly. He was really too arrogant. Fairy Yin he stared at Ling Han, preparing to make a move, but as her eyes stared at Ling Han, a strange coldness grew in her heart, causing her to actually not dare to make a move. She only felt that if she moved, she would suffer a direct blow from Ling Han, and die a beautiful woman. This was the intuition that she had gained after advancing into the 5th severance, and she was very confident in this intuition. According to the old man, this was a warning of danger, and she definitely could not be careless. To encourage herself, she drew out another sword. It was completely dark blue, and shaped like a crystal. There were ancient seals engraved on its surface. This is the Jade Moontide Birth Sword, the precious tool that has been passed down through the generations of Fairy Yin He's clan. No, this must be a secondary sword. Otherwise, why would Fairy Yin He bring it out? Even if it's a secondary sword, it should still be incredibly powerful, right? Why hasn't Fairy Yin He made a move yet? Everyone was surprised. Fairy Yin He seemed to have become stupid. She only maintained her posture, but did not make a move all this time. Chapter 2288. If these people were shouting slogans like "Long live the foreign realm," or "Invincible in the foreign realm," Ling Han would not be the slightest bit surprised. But for survival, was something that Ling Han could not understand. Could it be that there was some big lie in the foreign territory? That it wasn't the celestial region that was being invaded by them, but the celestial region was invading the foreign territory? Ling Han sat quietly. It was better for him to listen quietly now. "Do you know what kind of danger we are facing now?" the 9 Lotus powerhouse asked, his tone very heavy. "Yes," everyone shouted loudly. The 9 Lotus powerhouse nodded. "The Xian'anai plane is attacking us. Their plane level is higher than ours. There are countless powerhouses, and once they attack, we will all be slaughtered. Our plane will be devoured by the Xian'anai plane. Our descendants will all be extinct. From then on, our existence will be completely erased. What's our only hope?" he asked loudly. "Take down the celestial region, that super low-level plane, kill everyone there, and then let our plane devour that super low-level plane, raise our plane level, and then we can fight against the Xian'anai plane, or even surpass it." Everyone said almost in unison. This was definitely not the first time they had this kind of conversation. Ling Han listened at the side, already shocked to the point of speechlessness. It turned out that the foreign territory was also in the same situation as the celestial region. They were being invaded by another plane. This plane level was higher, and could invade at any time, leading to the extinction of the foreign territory. When the nest is overturned, there are no unharmed eggs. The solution was also very simple. That was to destroy the celestial region, raise their plane level, and then be able to fight against the Xian'anai plane, or even counterattack. It turned out that the foreign territory had always been fighting on two sides. One was resisting the invasion of foreign enemies, and the other was invading the celestial region. No wonder the foreign celestial venerables were so active. It turned out to be for the most basic survival. Wait, Ling Han shook his head in his heart. The celestial venerables were already above the rules. Then in a different world, how much impact would it have on them? No one knew this. Maybe there was no impact. Maybe there was impact. But even he could recultivate the rules of the foreign territory. Why couldn't the celestial venerables? An Empyrean was so strong that even if the foreign realm was destroyed, someone like Empyrean Scarlet Flame could still enter the Xiananai plane and live a carefree life. Immortal Domain's 3 individuals are extremely calm, not caring about the other side's invasion at all, instead fervently trying to get rid of outsiders. Therefore, there must be something else in between. Unfortunately, such a secret would naturally not be made public. Only a few old fellows and big shots knew about it. A feeling of exhaustion arose in Ling Han's heart. So what if they blocked the foreign domain? Once the foreign domain was breached by the Xiananai plane, it would be the immortal domain's turn next. If even the foreign domain couldn't block it, how could the immortal domain do it? Moreover, the people of the other side had always said that the immortal domain was a super low-grade plane. Since the other side hadn't conquered the immortal domain yet, it probably wasn't that high grade. The Xiananai plane was the same. In that case, once a mid-grade or high-grade plane invaded, how were they going to defend? Just thinking about it was tiring. Wouldn't they have to fight endlessly? Ling Han shuddered. His dispirited feeling quickly disappeared and was replaced by endless fighting spirit. If defeating the foreign domain was the end, wouldn't life be a little too boring? Although Ling Han had never admitted it, he was very clear in his heart that he actually enjoyed this kind of life very much. He was constantly taking risks and making his life rich and colorful. He didn't want to live an eternally monotonous life. Fighting with the heavens, fighting with the earth, fighting with people, it was endless joy. He revealed a smile, his fighting spirit raging. He couldn't wait to immediately kill his way into a higher grade plane and fight. Moreover, the foreign domain is obviously more tolerant of celestial venerables. Whether celestial venerable Qi Yin appeared or attacked, the foreign domain did not target him. Then in a higher grade plane, would there be existences above the celestial venerables? Ling Han thought in his heart. This was definitely not impossible, but the current facts could support it. Very good. The Nine Lotus powerhouse continued. But to invade the immortal domain, we must be able to adapt to fighting there. First of all, the rules of the 2 realms are different. We who are weak will not be targeted by the immortal domain when we enter the immortal domain. But as long as we reach the celestial king level, we will. So we will not be able to display the battle strength that we should have in the immortal domain. We must be prepared for this. Otherwise, once we fight, you may die. Everyone should have heard these words many times, but they still nodded solemnly. Once the invasion and war broke out, even if they couldn't become ancestral kings, they would still kill their way into the immortal domain and speed up its destruction, thereby raising the level of their own plane. Today's lesson was to instill a sense of crisis in everyone. The Xiananai plane was launching a large-scale attack, and they were in imminent danger. Only by conquering the immortal domain could they be saved. Thus, this was an invasion of justice. Ling Han was from the immortal domain, so he naturally couldn't sympathize with the foreign domain. But now, he at least knew the reason why the foreign domain had to invade the immortal domain, and even won everyone's support. They didn't even hesitate to throw themselves into it generation after generation. After a day, Ling Han's consciousness was a little muddled. After the lesson ended, he went to the information room and flipped through the relevant information. He originally thought that the war between the foreign domain and the immortal domain was a secret, just like how very few people in the immortal domain knew that the foreign domain was invading. But here it was completely different. This was not a secret at all, and instead it was a powerful motivation for the foreign domain people. Very soon, Ling Han flipped through a large amount of information. The planar war was very cruel. The victory of one side would definitely be the complete destruction of the other side. The entire world would be merged, and the original living beings would be destroyed. Because living beings were like the motivation of the world. If the living beings weren't destroyed to a certain extent, the world couldn't be devoured. So the first thing the foreign domain did was to kill everyone in the immortal domain. Then, the immortal domain's heaven and earth would become incomparably weak, and then it could be devoured by the foreign domain. At that time, the 2 worlds would merge into one, and the level would be even higher. This meant that more and more powerful martial artists could be born. Not only was the foreign domain invading the immortal domain, The Xian'anai plane was attacking the foreign domain. In reality, the planar war had always been happening. There was a celestial venerable from the foreign domain, who had been to the Xian'anai plane, and even further planes. He understood a lot of information. According to him, the sum of all the planes was called the origin world. There were countless of them, and they were divided into 4 grades: top-grade planes, high-grade planes, mid-grade planes, and low-grade planes. The foreign domain and the immortal domain were all low-grade planes. It was just that there were countless low-grade planes, so they could be ranked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The immortal domain was probably the lowest grade plane, because no new planes had been discovered behind the immortal domain. It was always like this. 2 planes were adjacent to each other, and one was slightly stronger than the other. If one didn't want to be devoured by the stronger plane, then there was only one choice, and that was to devour the weaker plane. Ling Han looked up the information again. The immortal domain had only been born for 130 eras, while the foreign domain had been born for 150 eras. There was still a gap. Chapter 2289. 130 eras was a long time. But in the Yuan world, 130 eras were just child's play. It was said that the time of a top plane's existence was at least hundreds of millions of eras. In comparison, the immortal realm could not even be considered a grandchild. From the birth of a plane to perfection, it took a very long time. So the true flourishing age of martial art in the immortal realm actually only lasted for 20 to 30 eras. Only at this time would it collide with another space, fuse with it, and a connection point would appear. There was no weaker plane appearing on the other side of the immortal realm, which meant that the plane had not yet been born, or was still in the process of being perfected. One day, it would be connected to the immortal realm. The whole Yuan world was like this. Old planes were constantly being devoured, and new planes were being born. One side of the foreign territory was connected to the immortal realm, and there was a connection point, which was the springboard for the foreign territory to invade. On the other side, the foreign territory was connected to the Xian'anai plane, which was the invasion channel of the Xian'anai plane. On the other side, the light race and the holy beasts were responsible for resisting the invasion, and the 2 sides were at war. Ling Han was shocked. Fortunately, the light race and the dark race were opposing each other, and fortunately, the Xian'anai plane was still attacking the foreign territory. Otherwise, if the celestial lords of the foreign territory attacked together, the immortal realm would have ceased to exist a few eras ago. The planar war has engulfed all the Yuan worlds. No one can escape. Ling Han sighed. This cruel fact made him full of fighting spirit, and at the same time, he was under a lot of pressure. At this time, if there were experts from the higher planes, or even the top planes, would they be able to sweep everything by themselves? Only strength was the way to establish oneself. Ling Han temporarily put aside his curiosity and thoughts about the planar war. Anyway, with his current strength, he would only be reduced to cannon fodder, so he could only work hard to improve himself. He hoped that the foreign territory could hold on for a while, and also hoped that the immortal realm could hold on for a while, until he had enough strength to reverse the world. The martial arts environment of the foreign domain was obviously stronger than that of the celestial domain, because everyone understood that if they couldn't conquer the celestial domain, they would one day be conquered by the Xian'anai plane. Hence, everyone placed cultivation as their top priority. This world also reached a flourishing age, the number of immortal medicines far greater than immortal domains. Moreover, all types of heaven and earth treasures were also greater, helping the foreign realm nurture astonishing geniuses and experts. For the sake of attacking the immortal realm and resisting the invasion, the entire foreign realm was mobilized. For example, 100 Battles Academy was one of the countless academies in the foreign realm, established by the ancestral king. They did their best to nurture the younger generation, raising the level of martial art in the entire foreign realm. All living beings were attached to heaven and earth, and the power of all living beings could also be fed back to heaven and earth. If everyone was like a dragon, the power of heaven and earth would be unparalleled, and the suppression effect on invaders would be even greater. Ling Han couldn't help but think of Emperor Feng Qing and the others. They had sealed off the news of the Outlander Realm's invasion, pretending that everything was peaceful. This was actually slacking off the initiative of all living beings. It also prevented the power of heaven and earth from being strengthened, so the suppression of the Outlander Realm's experts was naturally not strong enough. When he thought about their passive resistance, he was completely sure that these three great figures didn't think about resisting the other side's invasion at all, instead hindering them, wishing for immortal domain to be destroyed sooner. Why didn't the three of them directly make a move? Because heavenly venerables were not tolerated by the heaven and earth, and would be targeted the moment they appeared. If they made a move, they would suffer backlash from the heaven and earth. It was fine to kill one or two people, but if there were too many of them, it was guaranteed that even heavenly venerables wouldn't be able to bear this kind of karma. Ling Han suddenly understood why the ancient realm would be divided into two, and why people from the ancient realm were not allowed to be brought into the celestial realm. That was because if the ancient realm was complete, more people would enter into the celestial realm and attempt to break through to the severing mundane tier, dividing soul tier, and other higher tiers. In this way, the power of heaven and earth would be strengthened, and this was contrary to the wishes of Emperor Feng Qing and the others. Of course, there might be a deeper reason, but Ling Han couldn't think of it. Forget about all this and go cultivate. I have to break through to the dividing soul tier as soon as possible. I'm clearly already a second secret, yet I have to be a fifth severance. This feeling is really unpleasant. Ling Han left the information room and prepared to cultivate properly. Though the 100 Battles Academy had only been established by the 10 Lotus Ancestral Kings, the various facilities in the academy were of the highest quality, such as the Time Cultivation Room, which could accelerate one's cultivation up to 1,000 times. However, it was not easy to enter into this kind of cultivation room. One had to show the highest level of cultivation talent. Though Ling Han was a monarch tier, he still wasn't qualified to enter into this kind of cultivation room. He had to have a better performance. He still hadn't started cultivating, and the Empress, Hunyou, and Bewitching Maiden Ro had already mastered the heaven-deceiving technique, and could truly travel in the foreign realm. Furthermore, Hunyou and the Empress cultivation level had also returned to the fifth severance, and as for Bewitching Maiden Ro, she had completed the leap from Emperor tier to Monarch tier, also advancing to the fifth severance. This was naturally the wondrous use of the fruits of the 100 Fruits tree. She was very lucky, and only used 3 to complete the breakthrough. Ling Han first left with the 3 women, and then they exited the Black Tower, changing into the appearance of the people of the foreign realm, and then using the modified version of the heaven-deceiving technique to disguise themselves. Then, even if the ancestral kings weren't careful, they probably wouldn't be able to discover their abnormalities. But without exception, the 3 women all chose the appearance of the angel tribe. There was no other reason than it was good. On this point, not to mention the Empress and Bewitching Maiden Ro, even Hunyou was no exception. Ling Han was very gloomy. The 3 women would all stay in the angel district, and none of them would stay with him. Ling Han, don't be sad, Hunyou will often come to see you. Hunyou patted Ling Han's shoulder, looking like she was consoling him. Ling Han could only shake his head and bring the 3 women back to the academy. The 100 Battles Academy welcomed prodigies with open doors at all times, and since the 3 women were all monarch tiers, they were naturally accepted. Their arrival also caused a commotion in the angel district, because there weren't many monarch tiers in the foreign realm. What more when there were 3 stunning beauties that were as beautiful as goddesses. Ling Han spent close to half a year in the time cultivation chamber, and was called out by someone. It was Fairy Yanhe. Tyrant, are you interested in joining my team? This woman asked. Previously, she had once thought of never having any contact with Ling Han again, so as to avoid recalling the scene of her being humiliated by Ling Han, but now there was a necessary reason. Ling Han asked indifferently, "What for?" "I obtained an ancient map from my clan, and discovered an incredible place that might bring us great fortune," Fairy Yanhe said. Ling Han thought that if he cultivated on his own, it would probably take at least several tens of thousands of years to return to the second secret. And this was already taking into account the resources given by the Academy, but if there were some natural treasures, then the time would be greatly shortened. He naturally hoped that he could return to the second secret as soon as possible. "When do we leave?" he asked. "If Brother Tyrant agrees, I'll go contact a few more people, and we can leave in about 10 days, Fairy Yin, he said. Ling Han nodded, and then entered the time cultivation chamber again. Even if there were only 10 days, he didn't want to waste it. Fairy Yin, he couldn't help but be gloomy. This guy was actually so dismissive of her. It couldn't be helped. This stinking bastard of the demon race didn't know how to appreciate her beauty. She comforted herself like this. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 2290. 10 days later, Fairy Yin he arrived as promised. Ling Han walked out of the academy with her, and after making a detour, they entered a small forest. There were already over a dozen people waiting here, all of them beautiful angels. When the two of them appeared, 3 of the angel race's beauties even winked at him, but they didn't let anyone else notice. They were the Empress, Hunyo, and bewitching Maiden Ro. Why did these 3 girls also come here? They were monarch tiers, so it wasn't strange that Fairy Yin he would invite them. What was strange was that these 3 girls actually didn't tell him. Presumably, they wanted to give him a surprise. However, when Fairy Yin he actually invited a demon, the remaining people were all displeased. What did this mean? Fairy Yin he, why did you allow a demon to join our group? A man was the first to speak up. He had a head of golden hair, and his skin was soft and supple. His skin was better than most women's. Fairy Yin he already knew that Ling Han's arrival would cause everyone's displeasure. She smiled faintly and said, Brother Tyrant's strength is very extraordinary, and will be of great help to our group. Haha, just an ugly demon, the golden-haired man said disdainfully. The golden-haired man said with disdain, so what if he's an emperor? We have 7 emperors here. Hearing this, Ling Han felt quite rueful. The 100 Battle Academy was only one of almost 1,000 academies in the foreign realm, but there were as many as 7 monarch tiers here, which the celestial realm couldn't compare to. No wonder for so many years, it was always the foreign realm that invaded the celestial realm, and the celestial realm could only barely defend. Han Feng, be careful with your words. Fairy Yin he immediately warned. She had seen Ling Han's ruthlessness, and also knew that this person's strength was nature-defying. In front of him, she couldn't even make a move. Fairy Yin he, you've been fooled by this brat's boasting, right? The golden-haired man said with a cold smile. This Fairy Yin he was a pearl of the angel zone of the 100 Battle Academy. Before Hunyo and the other 2 girls appeared, she was a unique existence, and who knew how many men coveted her. It was just that Fairy Yin he had never shown any interest in men. So naturally, no one was able to get close to her. However, now that she was so intimate with a demon, these people were naturally displeased. The golden-haired man was only the first to jump out. Goddess Yin he furrowed her brows. In truth, she was very displeased with Ling Han. He had messed around with her things and treated her with disdain. If it wasn't for the fact that Ling Han was ridiculously strong and could greatly increase the safety factor of this adventure, she definitely wouldn't have called Ling Han along. Those who are unwilling to fight alongside Brother Tyrant can leave the team immediately. I won't force you, Fairy Yin he said calmly. Everyone looked at each other, their displeasure growing. They felt that Fairy Yin he was being too biased towards Ling Han. No matter how they looked at it, they couldn't see how strong this demon was. Brother Tyrant, right? I'd like to ask for some advice, the golden-haired man said. He glanced at Ling Han, the corners of his mouth curling up slightly. Ling Han, on the other hand, said to Goddess Yin he, it's fine to kill this idiot, right? Goddess Yin he hastily shook her head. Han Feng is the young master of the Gold Sun clan. Please show mercy, Brother Tyrant. Oh, all right. Ling Han smiled. When the others heard this, they were naturally even more displeased. Before the fight even started, the 2 of them were already certain that the golden-haired man would lose. Was this not reasonable? The other party was a 5-leaf emperor after all. Even if there were differences in strength between emperors, it shouldn't be this exaggerated. Alright. The golden-haired man's expression was dark. He immediately took out a sword that glowed as though it was transparent. He shook it lightly, and 10 runes immediately appeared on the light sword. A 10 talisman treasure, the others exclaimed. In the foreign domain, the strength of a treasure depended on the number of runes imprinted on it. However, at the level of the 6 lotuses, the upper limit was only 10 runes. However, it was extremely difficult to achieve. The requirements on the materials and the forger were too high. Even if they were not emperors or sovereigns, it was still difficult for them to have a 10 talisman treasure. Normally, they would only have 8 talisman treasures. 9 talisman treasures were extremely rare. The golden-haired man immediately took out a 10 talisman treasure. It was clear that he was extremely furious. He wanted to defeat Ling Han in one go. Come, the golden-haired man was immediately filled with confidence with the treasure in his hand. A 10 talisman treasure, and his emperors might meant that he was invincible. Since you're asking for a beating, I'll fulfill your wish, Ling Han said indifferently. He casually raised his hand and pressed it towards the golden-haired man. You overestimate yourself. The golden-haired man snorted. He swung his sword and slashed at Ling Han. Wang! There was a flash of light that was incomparably brilliant. Ling Han did not mind. He continued to press his hand down. Crack! The sword light instantly shattered. Ling Han's hand was like a 5-finger mountain. It immediately pressed the golden-haired man to the ground. His entire body was in the shape of the Chinese character, and his face was facing downwards. Everyone was stunned. The golden-haired man was actually not a match for Ling Han. It had to be known that the golden-haired man had taken out a 10 talisman treasure, which could greatly increase his battle prowess. How could he still not be able to block a single attack from Ling Han? Now, everyone should no longer have any doubts about Brother Tyrant's strength, right? Fairy Yin, he said timely. Although she already knew Ling Han's strength, this scene still caused her heart to ripple. Everyone was speechless. If Ling Han was a member of the angel tribe, then they would definitely be delighted to surround him like stars surrounding the moon. But now, they only felt even more envious of Ling Han. How could such a freak appear in a mere demon tribe? Welcome to the team, Brother Tyrant. A man smiled, but his smile was extremely forced. They looked at each other, and had already exchanged their thoughts. That was to isolate Ling Han in the following time, and carry out cold violence. Thankfully, although Fairy Yin he seemed to have fallen for it, there were still 3 girls as beautiful as goddesses in the team. None of them were inferior to Fairy Yin he. There were plenty of fish in the sea. Let's go. Fairy Yin he waved her hand. After setting out, she even introduced Ling Han to the others. Ling Han did not care about the others, but when he heard the names of Hunyao and the others, he could not help but laugh out loud. One was called Niao, one was called Xing, and one was called Ro. How lazy, they all took one of their own names. Seeing Ling Han's smiling expression, Fairy Yin he immediately warned, Brother Tyrant, don't have any ideas about the 3 of them. Why? Ling Han asked with a smile. Did he need to have any ideas? They were all his wives. They've already been taken, Fairy Yin he said. Then I'm not allowed to pursue them. Ling Han said with a smile. Fairy Yin he was instantly angered. She was as beautiful as a goddess, yet you did not notice her as if you were blind. Yet set your eyes on Hunyao and the others. How was she inferior to the 3 girls? What kind of taste did this demon race scoundrel have? She snorted and said, I might as well tell you. Do you know who Serene Source is? I don't. Ling Han shook his head honestly and rudely. He had been cultivating all these days, so where would he have the time to care about other things? Fairy Yin he could not help but be speechless. You did not even dare to know who Serene Source was, so how were they supposed to communicate? This is an Emperor star, she said solemnly. Chapter 2292. Who would have thought that 3 female monarchs as beautiful as goddesses would be seduced by a demon that was as ugly as a pig? This didn't make sense. Ling Han even winked at Fairy Yin he meaning, if you bet, you must pay. You now owe me 3 celestial medicines. The others didn't know, and were instantly so angry that they wanted to gang up on Ling Han. You already have 3 super beauties, and now you want to hit on Fairy Yinhe? As a woman, Fairy Yinhe didn't believe that a female monarch would fall in love at first sight. What more when the other party was a demon, and all 3 of them seduced one person. She came to a realization. You guys already know each other? Ling Han laughed loudly, clapped his hands, and said, not bad, you're really smart. Though she was praised by Ling Han, Fairy Yinhe didn't feel happy at all, because she still lost 3 celestial medicines to Ling Han. No, she was tricked into losing 3 celestial medicines. This guy was purposely setting a trap for her. She was extremely angry, but couldn't help but admire Ling Han's ability. A demon seduced 3 angelic beauties. He was practically a love saint. Everyone was still eating, but all of them were tasteless. 4 top beauties were seduced by Ling Han, which made their hearts ache when they thought about it. However, prodigies were prodigies after all. After eating, they continued on their way, and everyone collected their emotions. Nothing was more important than their own strength. Moreover, Wuxia and the other 2 girls had already gotten on Yu Yuan and the others. When they returned to the academy, the 3 of them definitely wouldn't stand by and watch as Ling Han had beauties on his left and right, with another backing. On their way, they would sometimes enter areas where the regulations of light were strong, and other times they would enter areas where the regulations of darkness were strong. They would try their best to avoid them and walk in neutral areas. Thankfully, the regulations of darkness that Ling Han cultivated weren't strong in the first place. If he actively dispersed it, neither the regulations of light nor the regulations of darkness would affect him. And Wuxia and the other 2 girls' attainments were even lower, so the effect would be negligible. Though the 2 can't be cultivated at the same time, they can both be used for reference. Ling Han said in his heart, the world was high and mighty, its power unfathomable, and the rules were the materialization of the world's power. They had traces to follow and reason to follow, and they were no longer ethereal and illusory. Through the darkness and light natural laws, he might be able to see through the secrets of the foreign world's power. Together with the fact that he was previously the ruler of a world, this would be of great help to him, allowing him to transcend the natural laws and directly reach the essence. Why was the Heaven and Earth course so important? It was because it could allow people to reach things above the laws, allowing them to take a step beyond the laws. 3 months later, they arrived at the foot of a tall mountain. According to the information my family obtained, this might be the ancient tomb of an ancient expert. Fairy Yinhe said. In the end, she was willing to divulge some actual secrets. Previously, she had been tight-lipped. This is a test given to me by my family to see if I can successfully excavate this ancient tomb. She said to the crowd. I hope that everyone can do their best to help me. After the ancient tomb is opened, everyone can choose a treasure. If there is a cultivation technique, everyone can copy it. It's our honor to be able to help Fairy. That's right. Why are you still talking about treasures? It's fine as long as there is a cultivation technique. Everyone spoke very politely. The main reason was that Wuxia and the other 2 girls obviously had no chance, and Fairy Yinhe didn't seem to have fallen, so everyone's eyes naturally turned back to her. Then I'll thank everyone first. Fairy Yinhe bowed to everyone, and then led them up the mountain. After walking for a while, she would stop, close her eyes, and ponder before moving again. There had to be an incredibly complicated map in her mind. Otherwise, she wouldn't need to walk and stop like this. Ling Han observed carefully, and discovered that there was indeed something special about this place. The mountain rocks were like pillars, each one standing straight. At the beginning, it was nothing, but now that they had walked, he saw that there was actually a dense fog in the surroundings, which seriously affected his vision. This was a formation. Ong! A beast roar rang out, and a snow-white tiger actually walked out from behind a stone pillar. It had a pair of wings, and this was a saint beast. On its forehead, there was a snow-white lotus with 7 petals and 2 leaves. Everyone's expression changed. Though there was no lack of monarch tears among them, 5th Severance was only comparable to Yang's soul. After all, there was a gap of a major tier between them. And now this saint beast was at the Yin soul tier. enough to match 10/5 Severance Monarch tiers. And this was even assuming that this Saint Beast wasn't some King tier or Emperor tier. Otherwise, it could easily defeat them. Set up the formation. Fairy Yin, he shouted softly. They had already made preparations long before coming here. So they naturally wouldn't be thrown into confusion just because they had encountered a 7-Lotus 2-leaf Saint Beast. They immediately set up a formation. 7 people formed a group, and they could combine their power, displaying battle prowess that was even stronger than ordinary combined forces. Fairy Yin, he took the lead, and immediately charged towards that tiger. Yet Ling Han's eyes narrowed slightly. The appearance of this tiger was too strange. He had a feeling that this wasn't a real tiger, but rather an illusion created by a formation. Boom! Fairy Yin, his attack landed, and that tiger suddenly trembled, vanishing without a trace. Where's that Saint Beast? Could it have grasped a spatial secret technique and escaped? That's right. How could a 7-Lotus 2-leaf Saint Beast be so easy to kill? They didn't dare to be careless, and they all stood on guard to prevent this Saint Beast from catching them by surprise. Ling Han smiled and said, "There's no need to be so nervous. This should be an illusory formation. That Saint Beast can't possibly appear again." Presumptuous. Everyone shook their heads. How did that Saint Beast look fake? Right at this moment, a white shadow flashed, and another Saint Beast appeared. This time, it was a snow-white battle wolf with a pair of wings on its back. Only its eyes were golden, and it exuded an awe-inspiring divine might. There were 7 Lotus 3-leaf Saint Beasts on its forehead. Not good. Everyone's expression changed. They could match a 7 Lotus 2-leaf Saint Beast, but a 3-leaf Saint Beast was too powerful. If they fought it head-on, they would die. Only an idiot would fight it head-on. Retreat first. Fairy Yin, he hurriedly said. Everyone retreated, and only Ling Han remained where he was. The white wolf roared, and it pounced at Ling Han. Ling Han stood with his hands on his back, pretending that he didn't see it. Whoosh! The white wolf pounced, but it passed right through Ling Han's body, as though it was transparent. It's really an illusion. The others were shocked. Then, they looked at Ling Han with admiration. They really didn't find anything unreal about this wolf at all. Their eyesight was really too poor. Ling Han only smiled. He could tell that the Saint Beast was fake mostly because of his intuition. He didn't have this intuition in the past. It only appeared after he became the master of the world. This was because the master of the world transcended the rules and could see the essence of the world. Naturally, he wouldn't explain himself. He said to Fairy Yin, "Come lead the way." It was one thing to see through the illusion, but it was another to see through the illusory formation. Fairy Yin, nodded. Inwardly, she was thankful that they were lucky. If they did not bring Ling Han along, they would have been tormented by the mirage sacred beasts. They might have even given up on advancing. She compared the map in her mind and began to point the way again. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.